All right, guys, today we have a real special guest in the house. He's a survivor, been through so much in his life, been in this music industry for so many years, and worked with some of the biggest names. I'm talking about the one, the only Temperamento. How you doing today, bro?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for having me on, bro. It's an honor.
Thank you so much, man. I'm feeling blessed just to have you here. So I like to do my interviews in chronological order so I can help the people understand who you are, where you came from, and how you got to where you are today. I saw on YouTube you don't have that many interviews, right?
Nah, I don't do a lot of interviews. I'm just that type of person. I love doing interviews in like face to face, but we're living in a different time, so I'm trying to do as much as I can.
So where were you born?
I was born in Puerto Rico. I was born in 1981 in Ponce, Puerto Rico. I grew up in the first projects that were built in Ponce, so grew up in the hood over there, and with a mother and a father. My mother was married to my dad, and yeah, man, that's where my story started. With my dad. My dad was a alcoholic. He had a gambling problem. He ended up committing suicide in '89, and that's what brought me over here to the U.S. was after his passing.
So at that time, you're coming up in the '80s. Did you grow up with any siblings?
Yeah. So one sister and two brothers.
You the oldest or the youngest?
I was the youngest. I was the baby.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But before we get into your relationship with your parents, I want to talk about Puerto Rico and what you remember there. Help paint what Puerto Rico was like during that time. Walking the streets, like the things that you would see.
Yeah, so I was only there until I was 9, but man, it's crazy when I think back of like Puerto Rico and the moments that I remember. I'll be honest with you. I remember Michael Jackson. I remember the first time I saw the video Thriller, which to me at that time, I thought it was a scary movie. So every time I saw the video, I thought I was watching a movie every single time. I'm like, man, like my parents really love this scary movie, man. Like, what's up with this? I remember him. I remember the first time I heard Hector Lavoe. I remember definitely the violence because I lived in the projects. There was always beef with people around, in Ponce, and people would come there and like, a lot of back then there used to be a lot of fist fights. You know what I'm saying? People used to like respectfully fight, and like, your grandma be there, and I used to see dudes fight, and like if dude dropped on the floor, the other one would wait till he get up, and then they'll shake their hands and go home. And then it kind of started changing where if there was a beef, people would show up with the guns, and crazy as a little kid, it was like, always seeing somebody dead. I had my out the window from my bedroom was the basketball court, and in the 9 years that I was in Puerto Rico, I saw maybe like 4 or 5 dead bodies and like 2 shootings happen while looking out that window.
Wow. And do you know if it was like over drugs or it was just like territory? What was it about?
Yeah, I remember one of them was these dudes where they were just drunk and started getting into a fight, and they were literally, one was like in one pole on one side of basketball, the pole, and the other one was on the other side, and these dudes were shooting at each other. It was like a Western movie. Boom, 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 boom. And I remember one of them got hit. Everybody ran home. The other one, it was a dude that he did something to a girl, and the whole neighborhood from the other neighborhood came along, and the dudes from my projects just straight up like were like, "Hey, we can't do nothing about this," and they let homeboys shoot them up right there. The other ones, I just remember seeing their bodies, people screaming. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but I do remember that guy. He must have did something to a young girl, and they came through, and bro, it was like AK-47s or something. Like they lit them up.
So you're a little child at this time and you're witnessing all of this happen. How are you processing it? Like is it like, are you scared at the time? How are you feeling?
Nah, man. It's like when you're young and you see that stuff, it's like you're like in shock. You're seeing everybody's reaction, but nobody's turning around and telling you, hey, this is what this is. I didn't know what death was until my dad, that happened to my dad where he took his life. And even then, at the funeral and things like that, it was like, I was just like a little boy in shock, kind of not understanding what death was. So it was different than what I would experience now.
So you never had any conversations with your parents like, "Hey, what is going on? Like, what am I witnessing here?"
Nah, man, nah. It seemed like it was normal to them, so nobody ever told me what was going on.
Wow, that's crazy, man. So what did your parents do for work?
Yeah, so my dad, he did construction. So right in the projects where I lived, there was like the first school that they built there, but it was inside the projects, and it was like elementary to high school. And I remember he was one of the guys that was working there, so he did a lot of construction and things like that. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, um, you know, very good wife to my dad, very faithful, and she was a Catholic. We'll go to church every Sunday, and that's how it was. She was good, but he was definitely a mess.
What was your relationship like with each of them individually?
Yeah, I remember back then it was all about my dad. He was the one that was always talking the loudest. When fights were happening or arguments, it was just him. My mother would just be silent. She just, she was a feather, man. She was
He took
she
up
was
all the
just
space in the room.
Yeah, it was him. Every time, and he used to smoke his cigarettes, drink his alcohol, and I remember mostly me embracing him and like hugging him and things like that. I don't really remember him giving me that type of attention. I just remember me going after him all the time.
So he wasn't an affectionate.
Nah, nah. If he was, I don't remember, but I don't. I just remember me kind of like, you know, always chasing after him.
Do you remember like if he was always like this, like no matter if he was sober or not? Like he was
Nah, I
always angry?
remember. It's crazy because I remember one time that I saw him in a broken state where he wasn't drunk, and he was telling my mom like, listen, like if I'm asking you for money and I'm drunk, don't give it to me, because he had a gambling problem. This dude would gamble his car and he'll come home walking. Like that's how crazy it was. So he would tell my mother like, don't give me money if I'm drunk, like if I'm asking you for money. And my mother would do exactly that. And when he would get drunk, he flip out, he hit her, he break things in the house. So there was that one side of him that felt like he knew that he wasn't supposed to be doing those things, but he just couldn't control it.
Do you know much about like your dad's like early life? Like did he have like a really hard life?
Man, bro, I think you're the first person to ask me that question, and to be honest with you, I nobody ever has told me about his early life, and I haven't asked nobody. That's crazy. Yeah, you asked me that because all I know is about the from when he took his life to after.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow,
and maybe
that's
and some stories of while he was with my mother, and like stories from my uncle of like them getting into it because he was gambling money instead of like buying the things that he needed to buy for us. But yeah, his early life, man, I don't know. I know I know his my grandmother, my grandfather, they had 25 children, so he was one out of 25, and they adopted like one.
that's
So he had a
crazy.
lot of family members. Yeah, a lot of siblings.
Wow, man. So you said your father ended up committing suicide, right? Can you
Yeah.
take us through what happened and then how you found out?
Yeah. So um, what had happened was that there was one day that my dad was drinking. He was in the bar, and he had a gun with him, and he literally had bullets. He had like 5 bullets. And my cousin was there, my oldest cousin, and I guess he was like drunk, and like every bullet he would like say somebody's name, like he'll say my mother's name, then he'll say my name, and he just told my cousin like, yo, like I'm gonna take my life and I'm taking my family with me. So this was after he tried to commit suicide before. You know, he threatened my mother that he was gonna kill her eventually. So my cousin had called my mother and told her, "Hey, leave the house. He's on his way there, and he's got a gun." And my mother, she didn't know how to drive, so she took one of the cars and she drove from Ponce to San Juan at that time. I think it was like a 3 hour drive, and she didn't know how to drive, but like literally, I could remember like she was just like driving crazy. And we ended up at my aunt's house. Now my sister, my dad was abusive. He sexually abused my sister as when she was little. So when my sister was 13, she moved from Puerto Rico with her boyfriend to the United States. So she fled the island and came over here to the U.S. So that day when that happened, that my mother left to San Juan, somehow within that week, we were sent over here to the United States to my sister's man's family. And they took us in. They got us into an apartment. So we fled from my dad. Like my mother fled. And for a while, she was hearing that he was doing better. He wanted to go back with her. He stopped drinking. You know, I hear stories of like my uncles in church, and he was like, "Yo, come to church." He ended up going to church, but one day, my sister had went back to Puerto Rico, and he ended up going to her and apologized to her. And you know, my sister, in all of her right, she didn't forgive him for what he did to her. So that day, he ended up getting drunk. He went to the back of the house, my granddad's house, and he hanged himself with barbed wire. Um, he put barbed wire around his neck and like just dropped hard on his knees, I guess. And that's how my grandfather found him.
And what was your reaction when you found out that this happened?
It was late at night, and all I could remember is I was in my room, and my mother at this time, you know, she was with my stepfather now, and all I could hear is like a scream like I've never heard before. To this day, I've never heard anybody scream the way that my mother screamed. That's how I found out.
Like a shriek.
Yeah, man, it was the worst. It was the worst thing I ever heard in my life. Not never heard anything in a movie, in a song, anything, man. And you know, that's how I found out that my dad had committed suicide.
And for you, I mean, this is a terrible thing for anybody to go through, right? But how did you internalize that as a child?
I didn't. Again, nobody talked to me about it. Nobody said with me and asked me if if I was okay, how I felt. You know, I kind of just went with the flow. And up to when I was like 15, that's when I started like when I started thinking about it. And it's crazy how life is and how rebellious we are against our parents or the parent that's taking care of us. That I started thinking that it was my mother's fault that he committed suicide, and I started blaming her, and that's kind of what got me away from her and closer to the streets. I didn't want to be around her.
Got you. Okay. So you talked about witnessing domestic violence and also your father
Yeah.
being sexually abusive to your sister. Just witnessing some of those things, right? Like as a child, like do you remember what you were thinking?
Man, so I didn't find out what he did to my sister till I was older. Maybe till I think when I was like 29. But I do remember that my sister, I was like 5 years old, 6 years old, and my sister will always want me to sleep on her bed, and she would like hug me like like tight, like a teddy bear, like she would just hug me. And come to find out, the day that she told me that she was being abused, she said that anytime that, because I would be like, I want to sleep in the room with my brothers. I don't want to sleep over here with you. But she told me that any time that I didn't sleep with her in the room, that's when my dad would come and abuse her. So it hurts knowing that. It
R-
hurts.
Right. And I think the people from the outside would take a look at the things that your father did and characterize him as a monster, right? Like to do those things to their family and overall the things that you described that he did in his life. How do you view your father like at that time, and then as an adult now, like processing what has happened and being able to reflect?
Um, definitely want to be careful how I say this, because I know there's a lot of victims out there. So I will say, yeah, he was a monster. But one thing that I realized, and not long ago, I just turned 43. He died when he was, uh, I think it was 39. And so now when I look back, I'm like, man, like I outlived my dad. And looking back now, I'm like, wow, like, because I'm getting older, I'm like, man, like he was young. Like he still had a lot ahead of him. And something inside of me tells me, man, if he had the type of men, around him that were like me now, um, could they help him? Would they give him the right advice? Would they intervene and do something about it? I have these things inside of me that now the way that I handle situations and try my best to help other people and hold them accountable for their actions, something inside of me breaks for my dad. You know, I feel bad for him.
Right. And did you like growing up, did you have resentment for him for what happened in your life? Or like were you able to forgive him early on?
Man, to be honest, I never felt hate towards him. He was my dad. Um, when my sister told me that, um, I kind of gave all my attention to her and her hurt. I didn't want to think about him. Um, but there was a time, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, when I was in prison before I left. That was, I think, the day that I walked out. That was the day I said, man, I got to forgive this dude because I can't live my life holding on to what he did.
Right. And do you know if your sister has been able to forgive him?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, that kind of abuse kind of seems it's I know for people that I know personally as well, it's like it's kind of like a life sentence of pain, you know what I mean? Like it's really difficult to overcome.
Yeah. I could just imagine how can she even look at him as a dad?
Right. Mhm.
So I think that's where that's in her where she don't want to forgive him because he's no longer her dad. He was just a monster, like you said in the beginning.
I know for many of us that lack that strong male figure in our lives, right? We end up searching for it in the wrong places, and typically in the streets, maybe in hip hop music, and we take on the principles that we learn through these avenues. Can you share with us how this played a part in your life?
Yeah, music was a big influence in my life. It kind of came second to the dudes in the streets. Growing up, always seeing dudes that the drug dealers in the block that you will hear stories of them doing crazy things and killing people. And, sometimes, back then, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, like they will murder people in broad daylight and everybody will go back into their house. Nobody say nothing. So I grew up with those type of dudes, but at the same time, these were the dudes that anytime they were, around me, they gave me money, or the ice cream truck came by, they buy us ice cream, or buying us shoes for our birthday. So I grew up with that, looking up to them because I thought that they were the ones that care about me. And then through them is where I was introduced to the music because in their cars, they would have their music blasting. And well, when I was a teenager, that's when I fell in love with hip hop, with Wu Tang, and Biggie and Tupac and Mobb Deep, and watching BET. I didn't watch cartoons. I watched
Right,
BET,
right.
and it's crazy that I ended up a Spanish rapper because all I listened to was, to this day, I listen to English rap. I don't really listen to Spanish rap. I hardly listen to my own stuff.
You know, that's interesting that you said that because these guys in the streets, they were taking on that role of caring for you, right? You know, showing you love by buying you little things like that and stuff. But ultimately, they weren't the best influence for you, right? And then some of the things that is discussed in hip hop isn't the most positive as well. You know, how do you feel about how kind of like that dynamic? It's really interesting, right? It's like you feel like something is helping you, but at the same time, it's to your detriment.
Yeah, it's crazy because thinking about it, it's like it's almost like the gangs, right? Like I think these dudes were trying. You will hear them say like, I'm here to protect the neighborhood. I'm here to protect you. I'm here to protect your mom. Making sure, like they made sure nothing happened to us, and then the cops will roll by and it felt like they were protecting us from them. So, I feel like that was almost what hip hop was supposed to be too. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop was supposed to tell us about the corruption, about the system and stuff like that. But it became the same thing as the streets, where it wasn't no more about protecting the people. It was about turning on each other.
I think when the things started out, like when hip hop started, it was more about fight the power and like you know what I mean. Like there was like power
Yeah.
to the people, is positive messages, and a lot of times I feel like gangs they started out with a positive aspiration as well, and
Oh yeah.
then somehow it leads astray. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what happened in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. As a teenager, I was a part of the Nietas. And the Nietas at the time over here where I live in Providence, Rhode Island, we were, you could say, together with the Lion Kings. And I remember we had a gang that was a different one. We made up a gang, and we got so deep that the Lion Kings and the Nietas from New York came to Rhode Island to break us up because we were growing, and they were like, you either got to join one or the other. So I had a choice to choose between the Kings and the Nietas, and I actually chose the Nietas because of that history of them fighting for something. And it's crazy because I was in the gang, but I was the peacemaker. Like if somebody from another gang will kill somebody from our gang or they have beef, I will be the one that will get leaders together to try to get them to come to peace after things got out of hand,
So you
which
were
is
the
crazy.
diplomatic one.
Yeah, yeah, that was my job.
Wow.
Yeah,
So at 10, right, you ended up moving to Rhode Island. Why Rhode Island?
yeah. So that's where my sister's boyfriend's family was. So when we came over here, his family's the one that took over as my family till this day. I consider them my family because I didn't reconnect with my dad's side of the family, and my mother only had three siblings, and they were all in Puerto Rico. So this family from my sister's boyfriend's side basically became my family. So we came to Rhode Island, and I've been here ever since, man. This is where I grew up. This is where I started everything.
Was it a culture shock for you when you got to Rhode Island?
Oh yeah, definitely, man. It was different. Put it to you this way: the first time I got into a fight, like I said, in Puerto Rico, like even my brothers, like they will have me boxing with dudes like for money. You know what I'm saying? But we were taught that if you fight, you do it out of respect. And so the first time I came here, I got into a fight within like a few weeks, and the kid that fought with me, he was Cape Verdean. This dude grabbed me and body slammed me into the concrete.
Oh shit.
And I'm like, what is going on? Because I'm not used to that. I'm like, I thought we were supposed to fight with our fists. What is this? This is the stuff that Hulk Hogan does on TV. You know what I'm saying? So it was definitely a culture shock. But I was like, okay, things are different here. This is the jungle. This is the jungle.
So at this time, are you speaking English?
Um, no, when I first came here, um, I learned English within a year in school. So within a year, I was speaking English.
So they had like ESL classes at that time?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I remember the dude that I started hanging out with. This dude was like bro, I must have. We were little kids, but this dude looked just like Bill Cosby. He had Bill Cosby's face, bro. And and I started hanging out with him, but he was Cape Verdean, so he would just talk to me in English, in English, in English. And this dude literally, like, he told me English, bro. Like, it was
Wow.
crazy. I learned it's mad fast because that dude.
Would you say Puerto Rico has a strong American influence?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I know even the schools over there teach some English. Um, but everything, is Puerto Rico's part of the U.S. So, the music has a big impact. Everything that I grew up loving came from the U.S. Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson,
Right, right.
Donna. So everything, I remember. It's crazy. One of the memories I have is dudes, like everybody in Puerto Rico, singing Michael Jackson songs word by word, like literally word by word, and nobody knew English. So that's how that's how much impact the U.S. had in Puerto Rico, or
would you
has.
say would you say the Puerto Rican culture is well preserved there though?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, man. I was there as a young kid. I don't know. I know there's a lot of people out here that are super Puerto Rican or want to be super Puerto Rican, and they always like, try to stick to the roots and stuff like that. But, you know, as far as me, man, all I know is, I was young over there. And when I came over here, I got caught up in the system of here and the culture and, like, being around so many different races.
Right. So at 10, what kind of kid would you say that you were? Like, were you really into sports, school, or you were already into music?
No, so yeah, I was into basketball. My brother was a beast in basketball, and he was in Puerto Rico. His whole room was just trophies, like about 100 trophies. Um, he had so many trophies that he would donate them for tournaments. And so when we came to the U.S., he was playing for the high school team, and my brother literally didn't know no English, and he come out on the newspaper every single game, bro. Every single game, they call him the secret weapon, So he taught me how to play ball, and we would always play ball and things like that. He was gonna go to college and play college ball, and his high school coach convinced him to stay back 1 year so they could win another championship. And that's when the FBI was like trying to get rid of coaches paying and giving money to the athletes. So my brother ended up getting in trouble um, for that, and that's why he couldn't go to college ball. But he ended up taking care of us because he was like the man in the house. So he ended up, leaving basketball, working and stuff like that. But basketball is my passion. That was my thing. To this day, I still be going out there and teaching these kids how to play. They swear
Um,
they swear I play international or something. They're like, yo, you had to play like overseas. I'm like,
were you already listening to hip hop at this time?
um, yeah, so you could say forever, man. Since I was little, always loving the music. But I think um, when I was 15 and like 15, 16, that's when it just grabbed my attention. I have this picture of me in high school and wearing Timberland boots and like listening to Wu-Tang, man, and just kind of feeling like I was embodying them, and I would rap their songs and act like them, talk like them, and they had a big impact on my life, and it just took over me, man. It was I at first I didn't. It's not like I wanted to be a rapper. I just I wanted to be like them. They became my Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? Um, but it wasn't until I tried to take my life a few times at that age, at 16. But it was one time I was in the hospital. I was 8 months in the hospital. From the hospital, transferred to a mental hospital because I tried to take my life. I cut my veins. But in there was where I started writing music. And when I came out, I just started rapping.
So, in a way, you kind of followed the same footsteps as your dad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. People used to tell me, this is the thing that I think people need to be careful of because they did it to me, is my dad ended up doing a bad thing, but the people that knew him were always saying that I look like him. Hey, you look like Ramon. You talk like Ramon. You're gonna, you know what I'm saying? And people will be like, you're gonna be like him. Like, no, you know? And that had a big impact on me because anytime I get depressed, anytime life seemed too hard, I would just take those voices and believe them and say, man, I'm just going to be like him. I'm going to end up, killing myself. And that's what drove me. It drove me to the point. But, when it comes to mental health back then, the power of those words were so much that, to be honest with you, the time that I tried killing myself, where I almost passed away, um, I did it while I woke up in the middle of the night, and I don't remember it being real life. It seemed to me like it was a dream. So it was so, into my brain that it must have like just made me go crazy when it happened, because I don't remember waking up and wanting to die. It felt like a dream to me.
Wow. So it's like, yeah, and one thing I want to touch on is that you're right. As a child, especially, you're very impressionable, right? And your thoughts become things. It's a very it's almost like hypnotizes you. You know what I mean? The things that you
Yeah,
repeat in your head, the things that you hear, and you're right. People do need to be very careful in what they say,
yeah,
because like as a child, I think you're already fighting the idea that you're gonna end up like your dad, right? Like like if you were a girl, like people would think that you're gonna end up like your mom or something, But
yeah,
when you hear um people saying this to you, especially, oh, you already do look like him. Oh, you're probably gonna end up, like
yeah,
it's very dangerous rhetoric for you to believe, right? But
yeah.
what you were saying was that like you were almost like in a lucid dream state when you did that. Do you think that all the trauma that you had experienced in your life to that point was just self-consciously bringing you to this point of wanting to end your life?
Yeah, it was that mixed with life. I was young. I moved out of my house at 15. I was living with a girlfriend and her parents at 15. So I'm in this relationship, and anything that my dad had was on me. The jealousy, the fighting all the time, just feeling like I wanted to end it all because I wasn't being respected or loved the way that I thought I should. um, so all of those things played a big part in how I ended up wanting to take my life. And again, there's a lot of power. There's a lot of power in that, bro. It's sad to think that I don't remember that night. I remember my girlfriend afterwards. She told me that I woke up and my eyes were just super big. And I'm just a kid. I wasn't doing drugs, none of that. To this day, I never touched a drug, never drank because of my dad. I never wanted to have that part of him. But I remember I woke up that day and she said, "Man, your eyes were like this. It's like you were a whole different person. It wasn't you." So that part scares me. For a lot of kids out there that are going through the trauma. And I think what we spoke earlier, that people didn't talk to me about it. That was a big part. I think if I was spoken to, that would have helped a lot.
I think in those days, a lot of times people took a stance of like, oh, they're too young. They shouldn't know about this. They shouldn't be spoken to about this. But it's like really, when you're doing that, you're giving them game, right? You're preparing them for the possible things, especially someone like you, where you were witnessing such traumatic things. You needed to make sense of it. How can you make sense of those things and process them in the most healthy, great way in order for you to be able to move on, in order for you to be the least fucked up, basically, you know what I
Yeah,
mean, possible. Because it's just like you being a child, you not understanding what's going on, you're gonna, the way you process it, you might confuse things, so you
yeah,
needed that guidance.
yeah. And I think even for my mother, and I don't say none of this. I don't say it to like bash my mom, because my mom is the greatest. She's the goat. But I think her growing up, her parents met in an orphanage in Puerto Rico, Catholic. And a lot of that was also, the priests in Puerto, especially in Puerto Rico and the Latin countries. Back in those days, even if they knew the priests were doing really bad things, nobody could talk about the man in that way. They couldn't expose him, you know? So I think a lot of that had to do with that, with her just being raised up thinking that if a man did something wrong, that it was best not to talk about it.
That's an interesting thing because like in some cultures, it's like the women are very treated very, you know what I mean? Like it's like they don't have a voice. They're not supposed to speak out. Like in American culture, you'll see like women will see, like they have more of the rights, but it's
Yeah.
like in other cultures it's very silenced, and it's
Yeah.
a sad thing.
And it's sad. It's sad because, even till this day, if you talk to my mother about my dad, she will always say he was a good man.
Mm,
Crazy, and it's like a part of me is like, Mom, like it's okay to just say the truth, you know?
right.
So, it's sad that's how it used to be, Like you say, now you can't, now it's different. Now everybody has a voice, which is, it could be a lot chaotic, but at the same time, it's good in a lot of reasons,
Right.
for a lot of reasons.
So, you said that you ended up in the hospital, right? Like, what do you remember from that time period of you being in the hospital? You said that that's when you started writing the rhymes, right?
Yeah, bro, it was, imagine getting, you want to die, you're in a hospital where you can't get out. Your parents have to sign a paper or call a lawyer. And my mother was like, I ain't taking you out. You need help. So if that's where the music comes in, and I felt like it saved my life, because if it wasn't, for one of the counselors there, I couldn't have anything in my room. I couldn't have shoelaces, nothing, because I could kill myself with anything. So I will get this half-hour period where a person will come in and they give me a paper and a pen, and they just tell me, hey, you like to draw, you like to write, whatever, write something. And I didn't. To this day, I don't know how to draw. I could draw stick figures. That's it. But she said, how about poems? Can you write poems? And I started writing poems. It's crazy. I started writing poems, about wanting to die. But I remember when I came out, I turned one of those poems was like seven. Put it to you this way: I ended up putting it into a song. So I'm writing a poem, but I'm not realizing that I'm rhyming every bar. I'm not realizing that. That's how I thought poems were supposed to be written. So when I come out and I started listening to instrumentals, one of my boys, like, he was always rapping, and he was like, "Yo, bro, you should try to rap. You have a voice. You have a different voice." And I turned this poem into a song, and when I recorded it in the studio, it was 7 minutes long. But I remember everybody went crazy. Like, to this day, I don't think there's been a more realist, depressing song ever, bro. And it's crazy to think of that. But music must have been inside of me the whole time. The gift was there.
Right. It's crazy that you were saying that like you were just rhyming and you didn't realize that you were rhyming every bar. It's like self-consciously it was just happening, right?
Yeah, without nobody teaching me, bro. It's nuts.
Were you writing in Spanish or in English?
So that one I had written in Spanish. That one I had
Mhm.
written in Spanish because it was a poem. So I was like just writing in Spanish, man, and it was crazy, man. Think about it. That's how music got introduced to me. It was a poem, a paper, a pen, a pencil. It's crazy to think about it, man. I don't know how it happened, but I'm glad it did.
Right.
My life took a different turn now, but I don't regret music coming into my life, because if it wasn't for music, I wouldn't be here talking to you.
What was your family's response at that time to you trying to commit suicide? Like, do you remember any conversations you had with your family?
Yeah, so my mother definitely devastated, feeling like it was her fault that was happening. Um, when I came out, I I I took I tried to overdose once, so I took like 30 like pills, and ended up in the hospital, and they ended up putting charcoal in me to pump everything from my stomach out. But crazy, and I don't recommend this to nobody. But this is what my older brother did. He showed up to my house. I must have been like 19, and I was living with another girl now. Fast forward, and he comes up to me, and Now he's my older brother, so he's like the father figure. He's the one I respect, and he never screamed at me or talked to me in a bad way or authority. But he came up to me, bro, and he said, listen, what you're doing, I don't like what you're doing to my mom. And he said, he told me, if you kill yourself tonight, I still got to wake up in the morning and live my life. And I still got to take care of my mother. So you decide what you want to do with your life. And thinking about it, it was probably the craziest thing that somebody could tell me. But I never tried to kill myself after that. I don't know what it was about him. And I think it was that my whole life I was waiting for a man to step up and be who he needed to be in my life.
Right. Yeah, definitely. He like shook you basically, like with his words, right? Like,
Yeah, he put me in my place. He put me in my place. He put me in my place in a situation where I was trying to play the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. Doesn't work for everybody, and I don't recommend it. But for me, at that time, it worked because I think my heart was searching for that. My heart was waiting for somebody to say, stop it.
You needed a strong male figure in your life, and he stepped up and took on that position that you in the moment that you needed it the most, basically.
Yes, sir. That's how it was.
So prior to the music, you were saying that you were a nieta. What attracted you to that kind of life at that time?
The community, the sense of community. When I went to high school, middle school, all that stuff was different. Just school, going to school. But when I went to high school, I realized on my first day that, there were groups of different type of people, hanging out in here and over here. I would look over here and I see the African Americans hanging with their bandanas, in my high school. I think they were called the Ghetto Black Tribe, and they had like the army bandana. And then there was a lot of Latinos. So we were all like, the Central Americans and stuff like that. They had a gang. Because this is before MS-13. It was a different gang, but there was the Lion Kings, the Nietas, La Familia. And then it's crazy. A lot of us, like we on the first day, we looked around and I was in a group of like 15 people just talking. And one of them was like, yo, forget that. We should make our own gang. And he was like, yo, we're going to make this gang. And it was called Social Outcast. It was called SO. And, at first, everybody respected us. We were jumping people like in lunch. We would go to the field and like jump people in. And things got crazy. Like I said, things got so crazy that, Latin Kings and Nietas were organized. They had true leadership, right, in the streets. So they were like, nah, like you got to cut that out. So they came and broke it out. And that's when I showed the Nietas and, I learned a little bit about their history, about them being in the prison in Puerto Rico and taking over the prisons and, fighting for the prisoners over there. So, that's what led me to it. But because I was that guy that was kind of like the peacemaker, I was never really attracted to the violence. I was in it, I got into a lot of beef, into a lot of fights. There were shootings, like anytime there would be like a festival, a Puerto Rican festival, Dominican festival, one of my guys will end up fighting and somebody gets shot and things like that. So, a lot of that stuff happened, but I wasn't really attracted to it. I wasn't the type of person that felt that I needed to really be like a follower or be like anybody else. I felt like I was my own leader every time. So I was kind of glad that I was the peacemaker, because when I saw things getting out of hand, I love saying like, no more. Like, this needs to stop. Like, this person is dead already. Like, we need to solve this, or, things like that. And like, even when people were being disciplined, and I thought it was too harsh, I would step in and I would tell the leader, like, hey man, I think this is too much. Like, dudes were getting hit with like 4x4s in meetings. And, so something in me wasn't really attracted to it. It's just the life that you accept, because there's really nothing at home that makes you feel like you have something, even though when I look back now, I had everything. My mother was doing everything for me. And if I could go back in time, bro, man, I'd stay home with my mom. I would never went to the streets.
It's interesting because it's like the position that you took was the person that was trying to give order, like trying to calm things down and stuff. It seemed like that's what you needed in your life, but you took on
Yeah,
that role. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
um,
That's crazy.
do you regret joining a gang?
Yes, yeah. So one of my biggest regrets is joining gangs, not only because of things that happened, but friends that I've lost. To this day, they're still in the same gangs, and I'm still hearing that one of my brothers died or passed away or got murdered. So that one of my biggest regrets is ever joining a gang. Um, I do take pride in the fact that there's guys out there that feel like I'm their brother. So I take pride in that. I take pride that I was with them. So even when I talk about the gang, or even when I mention it in songs, it's just a part of me that's saying like, I'm still your brother. I'm still here for you, and try to keep that bridge of like, hey, if you ever need me, I'm still here. So I'll do mention the gang here and there, even with the music that I do now, just because I know that there's guys out there that still don't have a father figure or a big brother or somebody that will hold them accountable and speak truth to them.
You love the camaraderie of the group, right? Of the gang, but it was like the things that came with it also were um to your detriment.
Yeah, it was. It became real. It became real when there was a time. And I'm in Rhode Island, and I know you're probably more familiar with this, but there was a time where there was a leader of the Kings in prison in New York that was straight up sending letters out for this person to do this, to do that, and like bad things were happening. Everybody knows that story. But those letters were coming over here, and because we were together with the Latin Kings, I remember it got real to me because my girlfriend at the time was a Latin queen, and she's on the phone on three-way calls, and they're talking some crazy stuff. And I was like, man, like this ain't good. This ain't good. And I remember I told myself I can't be with this girl. She's gonna end up in getting locked up. And like 3 months later, like the FBI came and did like this thing called the Royal Flush, and they arrested mad people because they were literally just trying to do some crazy stuff in the streets, man. And they were doing a lot of like extortion and selling drugs and guns and stuff like that. So it's crazy that I kind of left. I left the gang or stepped away from it right before things got crazy, and I'm grateful for that because I think I would have gotten caught up in all that mess as well, just because I was around it.
So you did you like have to experience like getting jumped out or anything like that? Like when you took a step away, like any kind of punishment?
No, because I became Temperamento. I became a rapper, so um, you know, it's not like I didn't have to step away because there was a time. It became a time when the leaders from the prison actually broke up the chapters of Nietas in Rhode Island, where I'm from. So there was a time where the leader was in prison doing life, and he's like, I don't want the gang to be no more, like no more recruiting. So it kind of stopped. So, nobody could tell me like, hey, you don't want to be a part of it no more. And I became a rapper, so everybody loved me, and especially where I live, Rhode Island. It's like you could get from one side of the state to the other within 30 minutes. So everybody in Rhode Island knows me, and I just became like this hero of the city and the state, and I was like the governor everywhere I went. Like, Tam. To this day, people show me mad love. So it wasn't hard to leave that life because I became a rapper, and that became my life.
Got you. Okay. What were your influences in music at the time? Obviously, you're living in Rhode Island. You're just a short drive to New York. I'm assuming you were influenced by Terror Squad at that time coming up.
Yes, yeah. So, um, when my first producer, Spoonie June, he actually knew Big Pun and Joe and Cuban. He knew them. So He's the one that put me onto Terror Squad and things like that. And I remember he took me, man, I think it was a Puerto Rican parade in New York where Pun was so heavy that he was on top of the truck. And they were all rapping in the float, but he was like in a couch because he couldn't stand up because how heavy he was. So I remember
Do you
seeing
remember
that.
what year this was?
Man, I don't remember, man, but I think if I'm not mistaken, Pun, it could have been right before he passed away, but I know it was a Puerto Rican parade and he was rapping, but he was on the couch, bro. So you know, that was the first time that I saw him, you know, just passing by. But then, you know, years after, I ended up connecting with Cuban Link. I did 2 songs with him. You know, doing the music as you know, I started with the diss tracks and stuff like that. So there was a lot of people that was scared to get next to me or put their name into my stuff. But Cuban Link was one of the ones that wasn't afraid. So he ended up collaborating with me, and he had um, this dude named Cano. He had Poe Rilla. And these guys were like one of the realest dudes to me at the time, because I was like, man, like these dudes ain't scared that I'm dissing the whole reggaeton game. Like they on my side, like they love what I'm doing and they showing me love.
Mm-hmm.
So those dudes, they showed me mad love when I used to go to New York, and a lot of the artists in New York always showed me love, because I was kind of going against the reggaeton thing, representing a lot of them, because a lot of them saw that they were also being blackballed and they were getting played in the radio because they weren't from Puerto Rico. There was so many dope artists in New York. So a lot of the rappers in New York had my back. I was like one of their own.
Right. And what do you think Terror Squad meant to the Latino community during that time?
Oh, everything. Especially because to me, you know, when I look at the albums, you know, Illmatic to me, best album ever. But Capital Punishment, to me, is the most lyrical, bar by bar album of all time. You know, I know a lot of dudes love Eminem and stuff like that, but bro, you listen to Capital Punishment 20 something years later, and it's like almost, to me, I tell the guys, it's almost like reading the Bible. Every time you hear it, you hear something new. You didn't realize pun. You didn't realize this is what pun meant, because his wordplay was just from another world. He was too ahead of his time. So to me, Capital Punishment is the if you had like masterpiece like Picasso, like whatever, I put Capital Punishment up there, you know, word by word, bar by bar. There's nothing like it. To this day, I haven't heard anything like it.
You know, and it's really interesting because at that time you didn't have a lot of Latino rappers, right? You know, and I always say this, that it's like when you're growing up in the hood, you get these stereotypes of what you can possibly become, what you could possibly do with your life, right? But when you turn on the TV and you start to see that representation, you start to see people that look like you doing something else. It's so powerful. It gives you that belief that, man, I could do this too.
Yeah, yeah. Seeing the Puerto Rican flag in a music video on
Right.
TV, you know, was like, oh wow, that's one of my people. You know, they're doing it, and they're doing it good. They're doing it good. So it's crazy. I think, you know, even before Terror Squad, I think the first Puerto Rican in a video, if I'm not mistaken, it was a guy called Puerto Rock Blades or something like that, and he was like a part of a group. And I remember seeing them in a music video, and I'm like, yo, these are Boricuas, you know. But then when Terror Squad came, when Pun came, you know, even Cuban Link, like just that, you know, the beautiful thing about Pun and Cuban was that it was almost like, you know, listening to Jordan and Kobe if they were rappers, right?
Right.
They
Them
were
going
so
back and
alike.
forth.
They was
Right.
like one. They were like they came together. Like there would have never been, you know, it would have never made sense if Cuban wasn't a part of Terror Squad. You know what I'm saying? Um, it was so perfectly. It was just the right time for Terror Squad to come out in history and the impact they had. it was just beautiful. All of them, it's sad to see what had happened with all of them, with the stuff that happened, but I have mad respect for Terror Squad. To me, they're up here when it comes to Latinos and Puerto Ricans in the music.
Absolutely, man. Shout out to Cuban Link, man. That's my brother and the whole Rios family. So even though you end up not having a record deal, you started to garner a lot of attention through the internet, right?
Yeah.
You started out your career, like you said, dissing a lot of people, specifically the reggaeton genre.
Yeah.
What sparked that?
Just easy, just the fact that, again, I wasn't attracted to the going at people, but when it came to my rap music, I knew right away that I was being rejected. When the reggaeton artists will come to my hood and they will open up their shows, everybody knew I was nice. Everybody knew, like, yo, give this dude 5 minutes and to open up your show. And the attitude that I saw with a lot of them, like they were getting paid like $500 back then to come from Puerto Rico and perform over here, but they were acting like divas. And they didn't want me to open up a show for them. They didn't want me in the back room with them. They didn't want to take a picture. They had this mentality from the beginning, which actually helped them get to where they were at, right? Because it's like, if you want to be a superstar, you got to stay away from the fans as you can. That's why they have a fence. When you go to the concerts, they have something separating the artists from the fans. You have to seem untouchable. And some of that you can understand. As soon as you meet the artist, you feel like he's one of you. He's just like you. So, they understood that the more people idolize you, the more famous they'll get. So I didn't like that, because music to me wasn't a career. I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want to make a whole ton of money. Like, music was like what got me out of the streets, what saved my life. So I was doing it for the love. And when I saw that there was that rejection and they didn't want to support certain artists, at the time there was a lot of Dominican rappers where I live, and I would hear like racist things towards them from the Puerto Rican rappers, like, oh, those Dominicans, they're garbage and they're no good, we can't play them in the radio. So something in me like stirred up, and I said, man, you know what? I'm just going to go after all of them. And at the time, 50 and all these people were dissing each other. And even in Puerto Rico, there was rappers dissing each other. So I knew it was an element that belongs in hip hop. Like, diss tracks is something that is normal in the rap music. So I took a hold of it and I said, I'm just going to go at everybody. And I went at everybody, man. But I think the unique thing with me is that in a time where, if to be known as a Spanish rapper, you had to move to Puerto Rico, come out, you had to be co-signed there, come out in a compilation there, right? And over here in the States, you had to go hard with the mixtapes. You had to go to the streets. You had to sell your CDs outside of the, either give them out for free or like sell them in the streets. And what happened to me was that something clicked. When I first saw the first like social media page, it was called migente.com before MySpace and stuff like that. And something clicked in me, and I said to myself, how can I promote my music here? And I remember I talked to this dude who was paralyzed from the neck down because he got shot in the neck, a road rage situation. But he was from Harvard University. And I remember he was one of my fans, and I'm talking to him, and something told me, hey, man, is there any way? Crazy. I'm looking at the page, and there's a picture of me, like a banner. And I said, bro, is there any way, like, you could do some type of code and put like my song inside of a banner? Bro, I never in my life did I know that was a thing. And this dude said, oh yeah, that's easy. I said, what? Yeah, just give me the CD. I'll turn it into an MP3. I didn't even know what an MP3 was. And then I'll put it into the thing, bro. There's nobody else you could tell me that was on migente.com that when you went to their page, the diss track was playing. I was dissing Tego at the time. And people came to my page and they heard the track. And within a week, through the internet, I was getting phone calls from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, like people I knew that were telling me, yo, bro, your song is everywhere in the streets. People are talking about it. And then after that, it was like fire, like fire. All the DJs from New York, DJ Moet, a whole bunch of DJs just started putting my diss tracks and mixtapes where it was all reggaeton, Daddy Yankee and all of them, the Omar, whatever. But they started adding my diss tracks like at the end of the CDs, and that's how I got known through the internet. So there's nobody I know in any. I don't care if you do pop music, anything. I, I feel like I was the first person that blew up on the internet through music because I was using it specifically to promote my music, and that's how I got known. Like in Latin America, Spain, there was people from Australia listening to me, writing me messages, and at the time, that didn't exist. I remember going to meetings with record labels in New York, and I remember UBO was one of them, and I'm sitting there and they're laughing at me when I'm telling them I'm an internet rapper. Like, yo, I'm doing really good on the internet. And they're like, ha ha ha, like that's not how we do things. We have distribution, we do this, and we do movies, and we do. They didn't believe in that then. They knew it was something, but they didn't know it could have been used effectively. So it's crazy that I used the internet for that because it came out of nowhere.
You went viral before
I went
viral was a
viral
thing.
before, bro. I went viral. Listen to me. When you look at who was the first viral, whatever, people go to YouTube, all the Superman song or something. But bro, I went viral way like 3 years, 4 years before that through migente.com and then MySpace. Because on MySpace, I think that I used to do my math. I used to like do my research on MySpace. I was the first rapper, English or Spanish, that was independent, that had like 3 million plays on my song in my player. Like, bro, like everybody was listening to me, and I had no record deal. I had no like management. I had no booking, like publisher, nothing. So it was crazy. It was crazy what the internet was doing with me.
What year was this?
Bro, this was 2001.
Oh yeah, you definitely. Wow, that's like way before. I think
Bro,
that was
way
even
before.
before like the iPod and everything,
Way
wasn't it?
before. Way
That's
before, bro.
crazy.
Way before. Way before. Put it to you this way, bro. It was
Well, because MySpace was like what 2002, 2003, like around there, right?
yeah. It was like 2002, yeah. And I remember my first, put it to you this way, this is how I could prove it. Tego Calderon had the Esto Wasa Wasa, Wasa Wasa, right? And that song blew up on the internet. Blew up on the internet, the diss track that I did for him. And that was around that time. You know what I'm saying? But I was already before that. People were listening to me because of the internet. So it's like people in other countries in 2001 were already listening to me. I dropped the album around that time with rappers from Chile and Colombia. And the way I knew about them was because they were listening to me and they were putting my songs, into mixtapes, bootleggers, you could say, in South America. But yeah, bro, I was viral before viral came, the word came along.
That's crazy. What were the issues with Daddy Yankee and Don Omar?
I don't think at that time there was issues with them. I think when I was around, they were working together, doing stuff together. I think
No,
from the
I mean
start,
like with you and them.
with me dissing
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
No, it wasn't just them. I was dissing everybody. So I did a mixtape called.
But they responded though, didn't they? Didn't they respond to you too?
Some rappers did, but not Tego, not Yankee. They responded without saying my name. I
Right.
feel
Because I see like on YouTube they put like like this song you put dissing them and then they had like a response and stuff. I didn't know if that was like really them responding to you or because they didn't say your name.
From people behind the scenes. I was told like, hey, they said something, but they don't want to say your name because they don't want you to get attention. You know what I'm saying? And I understood in the sense that I was attacking them for no reason. I didn't have personal beef with them, and it wasn't business. So I didn't know at the time that a lot of diss tracks were kind of like planned. Like some people dissed each other in Puerto Rico on purpose because the album was coming out. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know that. So I was going at them in the personal. A lot of them took it to offense. I remember one time somebody from the streets in Puerto Rico had a hit on me because I dissed one of the rappers, and they were trying to get me to perform in Puerto Rico and like kill me. And somebody from New York called me and like, bro, this was a dude that was known, he was respected, and he called me and he said, bro, don't go to that promoter, don't listen to that promoter. That's a guy from Puerto Rico that's trying to get you killed. And so I realized like I got a lot of enemies, because of the things that I said, which where a lot of it was very disrespectful. But again, that was me back then, you know what I'm saying? And fast forward to now, that's how all diss tracks are. When you hear them now, everybody's, saying personal stuff, but
Right. It's crazy though, like that you said that they had a hit out on you though. Like what was your reaction like when you heard that somebody put money on your head because of what you said in the diss track?
it was definitely scary in the sense that I felt safe where I was from, but now I knew that I had to be careful if I came out of here, like if I traveled and I went somewhere else, like it became so crazy where I just didn't trust everybody. People would call me and offering me stuff, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to sit down with you and talk about a contract because I felt like, this person could be setting me up. So I kind of became like, it definitely changed my mentality on how to approach, the game. And because I wasn't interested in the fame, I didn't really care. And then I did get into a few confrontations with certain DJs and certain artists when I went to Miami, when I went to New York, where I got into, fist fights and stuff like that, or people that were with me got into it with other people. So it kind of became real in that sense. But
Wait, were these
that was a scary day, man. Finding out somebody's actually want to see you that dead, that they want to pay somebody. And this wasn't the rapper. This is just somebody that likes them. That was scary.
Oh, so it wasn't affiliated with the rapper. It was just like a fan.
No, this is like somebody. No, this guy was like the bichote, how they call him in Puerto Rico. Like he ran the neighborhood, and because I dissed the rapper from his neighborhood, he's like, yeah, we're gonna get rid of him.
Wow. You were talking about like you got into some confrontations with some DJs or artists in New York and Miami, right? Were these like known people, like really known people?
Yeah, one of them was known. I was in a conference where I was supposed to be professional. Everybody's there just to, listen to you, and you do interviews. And MTV Tres was there. There was a whole bunch of people, and there was a guy. I was a part of a group called Black Royal, which was a record label, independent record label. The main guy, his name was Screw. He had Akon in that label. He had Joel Ortiz at the time, and he's my wife's uncle. So that's how I met my wife. So at the time, he was the role manager for them too, and things like that. But he ended up getting killed. One day that he was with Capone from Capone Noriega. He was in a comic view that he hosted in New Jersey, and he ended up getting killed. So I'm in this conference, and this DJ who's known from New York.
You can't say his name?
I don't want to say his name because of the life that I live now.
I got you. Yeah.
But people know because I mentioned it on songs. But he said something negative about Screw. Something really negative, like disrespectful. It was musical, but to me it was disrespectful because he was dead. And he was the type of dude that I knew that guy would have never said that into his face. So I flipped out and I beat him up right in front of everybody, bro. Never got invited again to any conference, anything. Before that, it was like I was the man. Before that, I was the hype. Like I was the unsigned hype. I would show up to these conferences and Machete Music, everybody like Temperamento. But after this day, it was almost like they were like, nah, this kid is too street. And the crazy thing is, I wasn't. I was trying to do the music, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, yo, you disrespected somebody, you disrespected my brother, and he's not here to defend himself no more. So I did what I felt I had to do at the time.
Well, at that time, it was there was a standard more than there is now, where like you don't speak ill of the dead. Like now in hip hop, you like, it's like I'm pissing on my ops grave and yada yada, like all this stuff,
Yeah,
right? But back then,
crazy. Yeah.
I could see why you took it so much more serious, because it's like we went by a code of more of like, you don't disrespect those that have passed because they're not here to defend themselves. So the fact that he did that,
Exactly. And Screw was the type of dude that we will go, bro. He will go so deep into the clubs that he will bring us to the clubs. Like I remember we went to a Akon show in where JC was the main guy, and then Akon was opening. And this was after Locked Up came out, because that, you know how that happened with Akon, where like the song came out and at the beginning, like he would show up and like 20 people show up to his shows, but then it just blew up. So I remember we went to a concert one time, and Screw, we're in line to go to the club, and it's like 100 of us, and he was always the last guy in line. Like he would make sure we all get in the club, right? But he had like this leadership thing, and again, the whole father figure type of thing. He had that in him. I saw that in him. So he would make sure we all go in. And I remember Akon would perform, and there was a big beef because as soon as he finished performing, we all left the club, and it made JC look bad. So that became a problem. Like, oh, they were like, "What are you doing? Like the club looks empty."
right?
So I remember those things with him. So I had so much respect for him. He was a dude he was involved in the streets, but he's the reason Akon got out of the streets. If you look at Akon's like the VH1
Behind the
behind
music,
the music, he mentions him, and he even goes to where he got killed, and you see Akon crying in that interview, because he's the guy that took him out the streets. He's the one that saw him like stealing a car, and he's like, "Bro, come on, man!" Like, and he got him off the street. So I had a real respect to him, and that's what happened. I ended up flipping out, and I took on this. I think after that, it was almost like Tupac in the movies, right? Like he took on a character, and that's who he was all the time. After that, I kind of got into character where I knew I was being blackballed. I knew everybody hated me. So I became more negative, and I kind of I turned backwards. I went into the music, and now I started going back to the streets and trying to bring the streets into the music. And he ended up getting me in trouble, ended up
right?
getting me into prison time.
It's crazy because in hip hop, it's like we'll advertise the streets, right? Like that's we're selling the street life pretty much, right? But when you start to bring that street life into these boardrooms and everything like that, they don't want that. They that's when you start to get blackballed, like you said, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people has had to learn a hard lesson from. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like keeping it too real.
Yeah, yeah. I found that out real quick. It's like as soon as I had the meetings with them, and they're telling me like, "Oh, this is what we do here." Like, we'll have people writing for you. Like, you got to write more about the girls and this and that, and you in your mind, you're like, "Man, they're gonna love that I'm this real and I'm talking about the streets." But as soon as you find out that it's business, and they don't see a business, for them it was different back then because they didn't want you to know the business, right? They wanted you to submit to their agenda, to just be a yes man and like I'll do whatever it takes. So they didn't see that in me because I didn't care about that. So
Right.
I was blackballed really quick.
You once said something that I felt really stood out. You said when you were rapping about the depression and how much you hated life, you were being praised for that. And you felt like the devil had came into your life and made you believe he was there to save you. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, bro. So, as a lot of people know now, I'm a Christian. I follow the Christian faith. And, when you go to church, everybody got their hands up, everybody singing the songs, and they got their hands up because they're worshiping God. So it's like when I look back at that time, it's crazy how I was rapping about killing myself. I was rapping about, wanting to commit suicide and hearing voices and all that stuff, or the street life and the guns. And you saw the same reaction. You saw people lift their hands up, and it felt like I was being praised for speaking death over myself. You know what I'm saying? So I look back now and I'm like, man, like it, it feels to me like, man, the devil had me exactly where he wanted me, you know? Like I was like a puppet, you know, because nothing that I was saying is good for anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not gonna do them any good. They just gonna become they're either gonna be dead or in jail, you know, or victims are gonna maintain being victims. They're not gonna try to get out. You know, they ain't gonna want to get out the hood and look for a better life. So I just felt like it was all lies. Like I look back now and I'm like, man, like I was just broken. I was broken. I needed the right people in my life. I needed direction. Um, but when you're in that world and in those circles where there's no leader, there's no father, you know, what else you're gonna do? I remember one time I got a cousin who I was 21 and he was 16, and I'm 50 deep outside my house. And I would go tour and come back. And my mother would call me while I was on tour, like, hey, your boys are still hanging outside. Well, they're here, you're not here. But it was because they love me so much and like they didn't have nowhere else to go. So they hang out in front of my house. But I remember my cousin, a little boy, bro. I'm 21, he's 15, 16. And he looked at me, he said, bro, are you okay with this? Little kid telling me, are you okay with this? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you think this is life? Like you guys are okay with this life? Like this is all you do. And I'm like, damn, thinking about it now, I'm like, he must have been hearing that at home. His father and mother must have been talking crap about me that he repeated it. But I remember now, you know, to that moment, I'm like, man, you know what I'm saying? There were little kids back then that were more mature than me.
You know what's crazy is that like you were saying like people are putting their hands up to the negative message, right? But it
Yeah,
speaks volumes about the mental health of people in general. If that's something that you um connect with, you know what I'm saying? Like if
yeah,
that's something that you resonate with, those type of message, then it says a lot about you know maybe the traumas that you've endured that you haven't dealt with, and the things that you know that you relate to.
yeah. And you know, I don't want to bash it again. I don't regret being in that side. Um, you know, I felt spiritually I was being pulled away from 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 being awake and seeing life for what it is, a gift. But you know, it's almost like, you know, it's almost like comedy. Like comedy, somebody can disrespect you in a comedy show and talk bad about your race and talk and even mention things that you were traumatized with, but you'll laugh because you know that that moment is meant for healing. Somehow, I don't know how, I can't explain it, but laughing brings healing. So the comedian has a gift to heal people by bringing up what happened and just making a joke out of it. Can't explain it, but that's how it is, you know.
Right.
So hip hop music, in a sense, it's almost the same way. You're talking about, you know, these are storytellers. We're storytellers, and I still do it to this day. I do my Christian music, but I'm still talking to you about the drug dealers.
Hmm.
You know, we're just telling you the story of the things that we see. You know, I do it differently now, where now I'm telling you the consequences of it. Back then, I didn't. Back then, I used to tell you it was cool, it was okay, that was the thing to do. You know, don't turn the other cheek. You know, but when 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 you're young and you're listening to that, and you don't have people in your life that are, you know, caring for you the way that they should, um, you know, rappers become their pastors, become their ministers. They're the ones preaching something that's relatable to you because they're the only ones that are bringing up the stuff that you see every day. So you were talking about earlier about the abuse and the domestic violence. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you're listening to the rapper talk about it, so you feel like you can relate to them, even though they're promoting it.
Right. You said that prior to meeting with record execs, people would tell you like, "Hey, before you meet this person, you got to do this type of witchcraft or voodoo." What is your first reaction to when someone tells you that?
It was crazy because again, the people that know my history know that Don Dinero, who's Cuban, you know, he was like the biggest Cuban rapper before Pitbull, you know. He's the one that kind of like, you know, brought me under his, you know, took me under his wing, and like he flew me to Miami, and like that's where you know my music really like went to another level through him. But he was Cuban and he was into the Santeria, the Cuban voodoo. And when I went to him, his brother was, I don't know if he is still, but he was the president of Universal Latino, or Oscar Gaitian is his name. But he was the main dude at Universal. So I'm in Miami, and Don Dinero's really trying his hardest to get us a record deal, as a label, as a label. So we had so many meetings with so many people, but every time that I would have to go somewhere, anytime I had to leave the hotel, they'd be like, "Hey man, you got to do this before we go." And you gotta, just for examples, you gotta take this green thing and like go to the shower and just pour it on yourself because you gotta be clean before you see this person. They don't want to see you if you're unclean. Like I will hear stuff like that. Um, there was one time, bro, I would get phone calls if I was in my house and they felt that I had enemies or they felt somebody was after me. They'll call me at 6 in the morning, like, "Hey, go outside right now and like piss in front of your doorstep." I don't know why, but they will tell me crazy things like that because somehow they felt like their gods and their santos and stuff like that were protecting me, right? Put it to you this way, bro. This is a crazy story. Don Dinero was talking to a voodoo priest before he came to get me, when he didn't even know who I was, and he said this guy told him about me by name and said, "You got to go get this kid." He said, "If you want the success that you're looking for, go get this kid." Gave him my name and everything. True story. That's what they told me. And so there was the power. The power in that was real. Like I saw it with my own eyes. I saw dudes. There was one time it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm staying. They used to drop me off in Voodoo Priest's house. Like if there was a deal that was happening or a meeting, they would drop me off somewhere in Hialeah and be like, "Oh, we'll come and pick you up tomorrow." And I would be in a house with a Voodoo Priest. And I remember at 3 o'clock in the morning one time, I'm hearing a party downstairs. I hear music, I hear people, pa 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 pa, and I go downstairs, and it's just the dude by himself, no music, doing some voodoo stuff. And I'm like, I just heard the music, I just heard the people. So a lot of crazy stuff that I can't explain happened to me back then, but I knew I didn't belong in that, and it scared the crap out of me. And that's what brought me from the music really back into the streets, and me trying to do everything in the music through the streets and trying to get the money in the streets so I can continue to do the music. So I ended up walking away from that, not picking up calls. There were people threatening my life, like, "Yo, we got the Cuban mafia after you. Like, you're messing up this deal." And I walked away from it. And I thought I was doing good, but again, I ended up in the streets again, and the streets really it swallowed me up, man.
Wow,
Almost got,
so Don Dinero was pushing this on you?
man. I don't like to speak negative of him because I got a lot of love for him, a lot of respect for him. Um, he's a dude that I saw with my own eyes that would have gave his life for me. Don Dinero would have given his life for me. He would do anything for me. But he was in this religion, and my problem became more with that religion and like everybody around him. Um, 'Cause it almost felt like it almost felt to me that he wasn't pushing it on me. It was the people around him, but he was really deep into it. So a lot of the stuff that I saw was people that were around him. But again, I don't like talking negative of him because that loyalty and respect is still in me.
Right. Because when you hear about the music industry, you hear about all the Illuminati, satanic rituals, all these different things, right? And the industry, and there's a door. You know what I mean? Like you've heard people like Nori talk about the door, and so like for you, like what is that like?
To
Witnessing,
me,
experiencing what you experience.
yeah. So to me, it's more about something spiritual that even the blind can't see. They can't see it. So when I look at a Don Dinero and I look at artists that people assume are in the Illuminati, I look at it like there's something spiritual that is so powerful that is like putting everything in place for them. And it's not really people, it's just something spiritual. But then when you look at the videos, when you look at the CD covers and stuff like that, you can kind of make a connection of like, man, that looks like it's from the Illuminati, right? Because, for example, my last album before I turned Christian, I was a pharaoh. I was a pharaoh, a golden pharaoh in the cover. When you open the CD, it had the eye and the pyramid behind it. That was my album. And at the time, I was seeing on YouTube how they were talking about the Illuminati. And it didn't hit me until after I became a Christian that stuff was on my music. It was on my CD cover. And I'm like, how didn't I catch that? Even though I knew people were talking about it. It didn't hit me. It was like I was that blind that I didn't see that was there. So when I hear people talking about the Illuminati and stuff like that, apart from the real Illuminati, whatever, right? I think in the music, I direct it more to like the Bible where it says like, the problem is really the love of money and what comes with it. And like, just being in a world that's so dark that once you're a part of it, you're just blind. So I don't blame the rappers for pointing fingers and say you're part of something. I feel like they're all victims. They all came into something, where they were young, they didn't know the business, they being taken advantage of, because back then you would hear stories of like you had to do certain things to be with certain people and things like that, and you will hear about all types of crazy stuff, more in the Hollywood side. I was a rapper and I was being talked to about like, hey, maybe we should transition you into the movies because you have this gangster, persona in the music. You will fit well in the movies. But even in conversations with people like that, I will hear like, oh yeah, but you got to be careful with this person because, they're going to try to take advantage of you and stuff like that. So when I hear all that stuff, to me, it's more spiritual than anything. And I think a lot of people don't, I think the responsibility of the rappers, or the responsibility to me, the thing that they should focus on the most, or the fans when they point at the rappers, focus more on what comes out of your mouth. I think the biggest problem of a rapper is that the Bible says that there's power in the tongue. There's power of life and death. And like we said earlier, you could kind of say things that come real in your life because you say it over and over again. So people should focus more on that there's just power in words, and words become worlds.
So you don't believe that there's a elite group that is like in the industry that pushes agendas or
No, yeah. I do know in anything, you know what I'm saying? Like there's group, you need community in everything. You need certain people to lead certain things, business, whatever. You even need that in the church. You need people to be over everybody. That exists. That's normal. That's in the human, we can't advance without, governments. You know what I'm saying? Like governments with all the corruption they have or whatever, you take out government and people will just kill and rape each other all day and rob each other. So I do know in hip hop there's a lot of elite people that get together and kind of dictate like who's gonna do why and what type of music needs to be sold and promoted. For perfect example, I'll tell you this: I was in Miami one time in Universal, and they're having a meeting, and this was around the MySpace time. They're having a meeting about the girl Tila Tequila, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just listening to the meeting. And in the meeting, they're saying how, Tom from MySpace, like his like first friend was Tila Tequila. She was like an artist that he had that he was promoting. But they were talking about like, this is who we're going to use to open up these doors. And like, she's going to change everything, right? And I remember them speaking specifically about her reality show being the first reality show it was going to be a dating show, but she was going to not only be interested in the men, but she was gonna be interested in the girls. And they're talking in this meeting like this is our plan. Like this is our plan.
Wow.
And maybe like 2 years after, I'm listening to the young kids, and everybody's confused. Girls are coming home telling their parents, "Hey, I think I like girls," da na na, right? And I look back at it and I'm like, man, it wasn't that popular before Tila Tequila came around. And I remember in this meeting, they were literally saying, like, this is the plan. Like, she's going to change everything. So I feel when I look back, I'm like, man, like, who was talking that? Like, the people, I don't remember who they were by name, but I'm like, were these people even like record label people? Did these people have with this government? Like, I don't know. But it sounded like it was a conversation that was bigger than music that they were having.
So yeah, so that's what I was gonna ask. Like, so it didn't seem like a regular business conversation meeting. Like, oh, like we have this artist that we want to. It was more of like this is a grand scheme plan kind of thing.
Yeah, they weren't talking about signing her. They were talking about like this is the direction that the music has to go from now on, because this girl's gonna change everything. Like that's what I was hearing in that meeting. Like just letting you know that you're gonna have to talk about girls with girls in the songs now. Like your female rappers are gonna have to go in that direction because this girl is gonna change that. So in the meeting, it was like they were telling her, like, this is the deal. This is what's gonna happen. Like, prepare for it. Like, start making your music about this. Like, that's what I heard in that meeting.
Wow. Can you talk about Block Royal Family? You ended up forming with Don Dinero and Joel Ortiz, right? How did that end up happening?
Yeah, so I was already like, I already had like my groups and stuff like that, like Mafia Negra. I was a part of already a Spanish group, but Black Royal, when it came, when they came around, Don Dinero, he introduced me to Screw. That's how I met Akon and Joel Ortiz. And the plan was like they wanted to promote a Spanish rapper, so they did it through me and Don Dinero. And Black Royal became, to be honest with you, like the Wu-Tang of Latin America, and even in some countries in Europe, from like North Africa to like Spain, Switzerland, Italy, where without me planning it, there were Black Royal groups being formed in every single country, because when the Black Royal thing happened, I started saying Black Royal 401. I'm from Providence. That's the area code. So a lot of them they got so influenced by Black Royal, by me and Don Dinero, that they were just creating these groups. So because in the songs I would say like, hey, like reggaeton artists, like you're trying to blackball the rappers from South America. You don't want them to be heard. You know what I'm saying? You don't want the rappers from Dominican Republic to be heard. So it became like a revolution or something. So a lot of these rappers that felt that they wasn't getting to where they wanted to because reggaeton was holding them back, they were like, let's just be Black Royal. And they were like Black Royal Chile, Black Royal Colombia, Black Royal Spain, and it blew up like suddenly. Like it was crazy, bro. It became literally a movement. Black Royal had this thing in New York, and they had Akon. You know what I'm saying? But when I stepped into it, it became global, bro. Like it was the Black Royal became global, and I don't know if you know the story, but Akon ended up parting ways. Like he was still with Universal and doing songs. If you hear him with Eminem, Smack That, he mentions Black Royal. He's got all the Black Royal brothers behind him. The song with remix he did with Lil Wayne, he was always repping Black Royal, but he distanced himself from the actual group of guys because a lot of them were doing stuff in the streets. And, Akon was like, bro, Akon did what I should have done. Like, I'm going to do the business side. And if I keep you guys around and you guys keep screwing up, you're going to mess up my image and ruin my career. So that's what he ended up doing. And then Joel, I think it was, he had gotten signed to Aftermath. And then after that, he did the whole Slaughterhouse. But they were a part of the group.
Wow, but did you guys ever release like a full-length project?
No, we did mixtapes. Like there were mixtapes that they did as a label where, Joel Ortiz be in there, like exclusive tracks, and Akon and me and things like that. And and you know, after Akon kind of walked away from it, we just focused more on the Latin thing. Your Ortiz was more like his own thing. He wanted to do his own thing. I think he knew right away that he could get a deal like Akon and stuff like that. So he kind of he he would rep Black Royal, but he wasn't really hanging out with us like that.
Got you. Okay. And what about what was the dynamic like between you and Don Dinero and Joel? Like, were you guys really close?
Me and Don Dinero were. Me and Don Dinero were. Don Dinero was like my big brother. You know, through him, I learned there was a lot of wisdom that I to this day, like I hold on to when it comes to the music because of him. Because I never met anybody that knew the game more like him. And imagine his brother was president of Universal Latin, but he himself was being blackballed by a lot of people, a lot of DJs and stuff, you know? So because he would be the type of dude that if you look at Don Dinero in the Spanish side, I think Don Dinero was the first Latino to like have a song on the radio in the US that kind of blew up, the Pana Pana song. And you know, he wasn't getting the credit for it. He wasn't getting the respect. He was trying to cross the bridge and work with reggaeton artists, but they weren't like trying to do it. When they were in front of him, they would be like, "Man, I love you, bro. You're the best." Na, 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 na. But behind the scenes, they were doing a lot of shady stuff behind his back. Like they were really doing him dirty, and I witnessed that. And he had no chill. Like even in these conferences I was talking about, there was one where there was a guy who was like the main director at the time doing music videos for like everybody. And Don Dinero got up when there was time for questions, and he just started going off at him. He was like, "What was your first video? Who did your first video? Who gave you the camera for your first camera?" And literally everything. And the guy was like, "It was you." Then, so why this and why that? Like he was putting him in his spot, basically saying like, now that you're there, you forgot about who put you on, you know. And he did that to so many people, And to me, I was like, wow, like I have to respect that because he wasn't just saying. It's not like somebody in the hood that grows up with you that you make, and they feel like they're like you owe them something. He was somebody that actually was opening doors for people. People were when they had nowhere to sleep, they will sleep over his house, and then they become famous. I'm not gonna say no names, but there were big artists that literally was sleeping in his garage. That when he was trying to like do a certain type of thing with them, even for a remix, they'd be like, nah, they wouldn't even want to talk to him on the phone. So I saw a lot of that with him, and I respected it because I was like, man, like this guy's fighting a war. He's fighting a war of his own. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's crazy, man. You also ended up recording 2 Latino anthems, right? That featured Cuban Link, Reychesta, Poe Rilla, Nostra, and more. The music videos were dope too, man. And I'm talking about Nos Dinero. How did you guys link up and do the first song?
Wow, bro. To this day, the biggest moment for me was the day that I met Cuban Link in that video shoot. That he was there, just showing me love, you know. And I ended up going to a few shows. I went on the road with him. I think he had some shows in Baltimore where he almost got into a crazy fight. But he came and showed me love in one of my concerts in my hometown, bro. Like that he didn't have to, and performed at one of my concerts. You know, realest dude that I've met, you know, that had made it and treated me like a brother. And so when I went to that video shoot, I got connected to him through Nostra, who was a rapper from New York, who I had made music with him for years. But I think his management or his manager was Cano at the time. So Cano, Poe Rilla, you know, Poe Rilla is in those videos too. So they're the ones that really opened that opportunity for me. I think it was really like you know, Cano, like trying to get me connected. He was trying to do. I did a song called Saca Enfrente with SPK, Big Mado, and a whole bunch of rappers, El Lapi, whatever, and it was a big hit in Dominican Republic and over here. So Kano was kind of trying to do the same thing for the New York rappers. He was trying to bring them together. You know what I'm saying? And even to this day, it's hard to get people united in your hometown. But he ended up doing that in that video. So I was really impressed with the way that Kano was moving and he was doing his thing. That he was able to bring. Man, what was this dude's name? The Puerto Rican dude from Philly that was like a part of like, man, what's his name? He was an English rapper that was from Philadelphia.
Petey Crack.
Petey something?
Petey Crack.
Petey Crack. Yeah, he ended up showing up to the video shoot because one of the rappers was close to him. So it was an amazing day. So, the song is called No Tienes Miedo. I did 2 parts with Cuban and all the guys. But that was, to me, it was like the best moment in my rap career, man. There's no day that compares to that because one, the video was so professional and Cuban Link was there. And I was like, man, like I felt at that time like I made it. Like Cubans showing me love because I don't care if the most famous person show me love because there's famous people that are garbage, right? With all respect to rappers that are out there. But Cuban to me was the realest of the realest MC. So getting his respect to me was everything.
Right. Yeah. Like, I think as far as like Terror Squad, who you said that, you really respected, like he was like second to Pun, basically, right? Just like, yeah.
Oh,
just
yeah.
like
He was one. They were one. They were like one, bro. Like,
yeah.
There was no separating them. They came together.
Which one did you like more, the first one or the second one?
Definitely the first one. I like the first one. I think my verse was I think the verses were better in the second one, but I think the hook was better on the first one, and the quality definitely was better on the first one. So I stick with the first one.
And it's crazy because then you see like the beat for the second one recently got used. Did you hear that?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, Rick Ross used that beat to diss Drake on Champagne Moments.
No way.
Yeah, for No Tiene Meadows, but it was Benny Boom, the director. His son is called Mini Boom, right? He used the same sample, and it sounded almost like the same exact beat. Like when I heard it, I was like, "Yo, man, I know this beat from somewhere. Where do I know this?" And I kept hearing Cuban say, "Yo tu sabe, and then I kept hearing the No Tiene Meadows, and I was like, "Oh, that's where the beat is from," But it was really cool to see that happen, but you were a part of the whole 326 movement at that time, right?
Yeah. Well, Kano took, baby. It was a situation, that type of situation where I didn't have to ask if I could be a part of that movement. Kano just brought me right in because, put it to you this way, before I got locked up, right? I got locked up in 2010 on Mother's Day. But right before that, I was supposed to go on tour in Europe. I had 28 city tour that was supposed to happen May 17th of that year. I didn't end up going because I ended up going to prison. But my next tour after that was supposed to be with Poe Rilla and Kano and Reychesta and all of them in Ecuador, which is funny because when I came out of prison, the first thing I did, and this is real, the first thing I did when I came out of prison, I searched Poe Rilla on YouTube because I wanted to know if he ended up going to Ecuador. And I found a video on YouTube of him with one of my fans where the fans showing him like he had a picture of me on his phone and as a wallpaper. And Poe Rilla is like, yo, free Temperamento. So, bro, the first thing I did was search that. And for some reason, like, I was like, man, like, this is a real dude right there. This dude was representing me, like, again, that group of guys, till this day, is probably the realest dudes that I've ever met. Ever, bro. Ever. Those dudes, and I don't really talk to them anymore, I'm doing my own thing here with my family and stuff, but when I think of those dudes, I'm like, I haven't met anybody more realer than that group of guys, man. They're the real deal.
Man, that movement during that time was something special to see so many Latino artists come together, and it was just something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they had it. When you look at the part 2, there's Dominican rappers in there that are like super famous right now that they were nobodies back then. like Melly Mel, like bro, come on, like she's like the queen of Dominican rap. So it's like you see people in that song and you're like, wow, a lot of these people like, you know, they got far, you know. And
Right.
oh, and another thing, a lot of people don't know the first music videos Know the Product ever came out was one of my songs.
What?
She was rapping in Spanish. Oh yes, Know the Product, her first music video, which was the first music video that she came out on World Star Hip Hop. It was one of my songs. I did a remix called Capea el Do Remix 401. It was a Dominican rap song that we did our own version. And I flew her from California. And she came out in the video when her name was Snow White.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, crazy.
So I know that Cuban had issues with Don Dinero, and Don was your homie. Was it hard for you to move like in the industry with the politics though? Of like now people are like, oh, I don't want you to be cool with so and so because I got problems with them.
No, it wasn't because I walked away from Don Dinero's camp, and then I met with Cuban, so it didn't really affect me. I never, and to be honest with you, even talking with Don Dinero after the fact, even when even in the song he dissed them, whatever, it never. And again, and that's why when I mentioned the religion stuff with Don Dinero, it's negative, but I talk to him with respect because at no time did he ever threaten me or tell me like you can't be cool with this dude. Like he wasn't that type of a dude. Like I think to him, it didn't matter like if he had beef with certain people. And to be honest with you, he had beef with so many people and he was very vocal about it. I don't know what happened between him and Cuban, but he never spoke negative about Cuban to me. So I don't really know what was the deal there, but I never heard him talk negative about Cuban.
Got you. And my big bro, Big Lou, he also told me to tell you. He said, "What's up?"
Yo, Big Lou, bro. Yo, man, it's crazy. I just I don't listen to my old songs, but the other day I was searching for the song I did with him because I was like, man, I remember I did a song with Big Lou. I think it was me, him, and Chavito. But bro, Chavito's another one that he's like super famous in New York doing like these little miniature things, right?
Right. Yeah. He went a different direction now.
Different direction, but he's like all over television, bro. Like, but Big Lou, man, wow, a big shout out to him, man. That dude, he was another one that he was a English rapper that kind of gave me the opportunity. There was rappers like him, Immortal Technique. I came out in Immortal Technique's Third World album, and if anybody knows Immortal Technique, he didn't just record with anybody. He was mad picky, but it's dudes like that I have mad respect for because they knew that the reggaeton dudes didn't want to mess with me, but they listened to my songs and they heard the punchlines and they're like, yo, like this is one of us, man. So they showed me mad love, man. So big ups to Big Lou, a real one right there.
Right. Can you talk about the crazy Cuban Link fight that almost popped off?
Yeah, bro. So we're in Baltimore. So this is crazy. He takes me to one of his shows in Baltimore, and I'm thinking this is gonna be the best experience I'm ever gonna have. Baltimore's gonna be beautiful. Bro, Baltimore. I didn't know Baltimore, bro. And bro, we're driving through Baltimore, and all I see was like an infinite time of us driving and me seeing abandoned buildings, and like it looked like I was in another planet, in a homeless planet. And I'm like, where is Cuban taking me? So we ended up going to a show, and we were in the VIP, and some dude was like approaching the VIP, just like trying to say something. And from my experience, if you go to a hood that's not your own, and one of those dudes is acting up, and he's mad drunk, that dude is probably the one that's gonna pull out a gun and start shooting people. You're trying to avoid a fight with him. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll tell your people like, yo, let's get out of here, or tell the promoter, yo, you gotta get rid of this guy or I'm leaving. Yo, Cuban made the people in the club turn on the light. And he just went off at the dude, like literally, like It was like Tony Montana in the middle of the club screaming. And all I'm saying to myself is like, Cuban, like, you're nuts, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, this dude could literally pull out. This dude probably got a gun in the club. Like, what are you doing? And bro, he flipped out and he's like, I don't care. And bro, he went crazy, man. And I think it was the last time I went on a show with him. But you know what's crazy? Hey,
man.
Hey, but you know what's crazy? Like I never drank in my life. And he would he make everybody around him drink. He would always giving people shots. But I had told him about my dad. And Cuban never offered me to drink anything. Like he always kept that. And he would get me like a Red Bull or something. He would tell them, yo, get him a Red Bull, get him some water. But man, Cuban, man, that experience was nuts. Definitely a movie moment.
So what ended up happening? Did the guy just like back off or what?
I don't know, but I'm alive. I don't remember that well, but I'm alive. Cuban still breathing. I'm still breathing. You know, homeboy still breathing. Everything was good, but it was one of the craziest things. I see dudes in the hood. The dudes in the hood that I usually used to see like that will end up getting shot.
Right. You know?
Will end up getting shot. So.
But did you say something to Cuban? You're like, you're crazy. Like, why you do that?
No way I was going to tell Cuban anything. There was no. There was no.
Oh, my God.
It was just go. Just
and I know that you're not lying.
Huh?
I know you're not lying about it at all because I just know my brother so well that I know his temperament already. I already know, like, yeah, that's classic. That's classic Cuban right there. Like, that's exactly what he would do.
Yeah, I don't think there was no... You know, and whoever knows him, the few dudes that Cuban rolls with are some real street dudes that did their time too. So you know, even they, there was one dude, I don't forget who he was, but there was one dude with him that actually had told me like his past, and I was like, damn, like this dude went through, like, he did some stuff in the street, and he was quiet, like, and just letting Cuban go off. You know what I'm saying? So he must have been like, this dude's nuts, man.
So at some point you get tired of dealing with all the stuff in the music industry, right? As far as the mainstream, and you decide to make it on your own, and it leads you back into the streets. Your conscience was telling you like the stuff in the industry was wrong, but you know, it wasn't telling you it wasn't wrong in the streets. Like how did that come about?
Yeah, so again, I just realized not just the spiritual stuff we talked about, but the fame and the money and stuff, like, and the women and stuff like that. Like it got to a point where I knew inside of me, like, that's not really what I wanted. I just wanted a family. I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to be tranquilo. You know what I'm saying? I want to be at home. I didn't want to travel. I didn't want to be away from the few people that I feel truly love me. Because when you're in the music industry, it's hard for you to really know who's for you, because people are really there because they either know that you can get them somewhere, right? You're like an investment. You're not really a human being. So I realized that it wasn't for me. So I ended up coming back to Providence, and I started hanging out with my barber. I started hanging out with my barber, and I started bringing him to shows. You know, he was an English rapper, but he would come to all my shows, and he had just came out of prison for armed robbery. And I felt like I had to take him out of the streets. So I'm like, he's hanging out with me. But you know, he had the street mentality in him. So eventually he ended up pulling me away from the music and the family, and got me caught up in the streets where, you know, we were doing things we weren't supposed to. And I ended up doing an armed robbery with him. And I ended up getting locked up because of that, you know?
Right. And we're talking about, this is in 2010, right? You end up getting sentenced to prison for what, almost 2.5 years?
Yeah, for 2 years and 3 months for armed robbery. You know, it was my first felony. I had some misdemeanors before that. But I was supposed to get hit harder with a bigger sentence. What happened with me was that as it took a year, like he got locked up, the girl that snitched on me, because she was already doing a sentence, she wanted it reduced, and she didn't want to lose, her child to the state. She ended up snitching on me a year after. So we did this in 2009. So in 2010, there wasn't no, even the witness himself, he couldn't say that I was there. There was no fingerprints, nothing. So she ended up snitching on me. And at this time, people were talking to me about God and stuff like that. And I had like this conviction in me, like, man, like I got to change my life. Like I'm going to end up dead. And so when I got locked up, I knew that it was her word against mine. Like I could go and beat this quick, get the right lawyer, I'm out of here. I didn't have to talk to the cops. They probably let me go. But the day that the cops showed up to my house was the first day I went to church. So I go to church in the morning, and I'm walking out, and the pastor grabs me, and he's like, "Hey, I let me talk to you," to introduce himself to me in a church of like, it was like 2,000 blanquitos. Like there was no Spanish people there. These people had no clue who I was. And he grabs me, he's talking to me, but he sees me with the big chain and the braids and the watch. And he tells me, I got a word for you. He said, when you leave here, hell's gonna break loose, but God's gonna pick you up. That's what he tells me. I go home. I go to eat with my wife's family, which at the time they hated me. We had beef. So this is like a reunion, like after, and everything seemed fine. It seemed like they got over it. So it was a good day. I go home. I'm getting ready to go see my mom. And before I could walk out, I hear the door. Pa, 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 pa. I knew it was the cops. Because for the whole year that everybody got locked up, I was sleeping. My son was just born. He was 3 months. I was like in prison out here. Like I couldn't sleep because I was like, man, the cops are going to come and knock any day now. So for like a whole year, I felt like I was a prisoner of my own mind, and of my own conscience. So I opened the door, and it's literally in this city, like not a lot of crimes happen. The entire police department showed up to lock me up. But I felt like at peace. It felt like weight got off of me. I felt like something in me was like, finally, I get to face this because I haven't been right. So when I go to the police station, something in me, I don't know what it was, but I was like, yeah, I'm guilty. I was there. And they locked me up. But that's what saved me from getting 6 years or more, because I didn't take it to trial. And my
so
lawyer
you
was
copped out.
Yeah, I took the deal. I took the first deal they gave me. There was like, 2 years and 3 months for armed robbery. At the time, everybody over here was getting, you go to prison, and all the prisoners are lawyers. They're telling you exactly how much time you're gonna get. So everybody's like, they're like, everybody here has got 6 years to 20 years. My boy, my co-defendant, he got 20 years because this was his second one. The first armed robbery was against a cop. So they really wanted him to get hit hard. So they gave him 20 years to serve 10. So in reality, he got 10 years, 20 over his head. The girl had 6 years, but when she snitched on me, it got reduced. She came right out. So I went in there, and I was like, I'm not going to take it to trial. In me, when I was little, I wanted to be a lawyer. Like I used to like read law books, and something when I was a little kid, I used to be like, man, one day I'll be a lawyer. But I knew the law. So I knew that if I took it to trial, it wasn't worth it because I'm guilty. Inside, I know, like, I did this. Like, what's the point? I'm going to take a chance of them hitting me harder because I'm wasting their money and their time. I'm not going to do it. So I said, I have a better chance of just pleading guilty and asking for mercy from the judge. Like, hey, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. Plus, I was a rapper. I was loved in the community. I did a lot of stuff for the community. And even the mayor at the time wrote a letter, for me. So I said, this looks good if I don't take it to trial, because if I take it to trial, it's just going to be like, this guy's just, there's nothing in him that's saying that he needs to change or, that he messed up.
Did they ask you to cooperate against the other people?
No, because they were already sentenced. They were already in prison.
Got you. Okay, so they didn't
Yeah.
offer you like any deal or anything to be like, hey, we'll give you less time if you were to do this.
No. I put it to you this way. I was the guy with the gun, according to her. I was the last piece. I was the last person they were looking for. Um, but in reality, I wasn't. I wasn't. That she just said that because she had no choice. She had to do what she had to do, you know. So she put me in that. And the good thing about me, the only deal you could say they gave me was that they dropped it. They had dropped it from an armed robbery to a robbery because I didn't take it to trial. So my lawyer put that in there, so I didn't get hit hard like I was supposed to because there was some remorse in me.
Do you have any like, or did you at that time have any resentment against her for snitching? Because you know you come from the streets, so the code is that you're not supposed to do that.
Um, nah, man, I felt I felt dumb for one that we ended up doing the crime and involving, even though she was like the mastermind of the whole thing that happened that night. But she had brought some other girls that came with her, and they all ended up that night. Like we beat up this guy so bad the girl, we left with the money, but the girl stayed because they thought he was dead. You know what I'm saying? That's how the girls got in trouble. So all the girls got arrested. But the other girls, I think, because they really weren't involved, and I think they cooperated against her. They got off. But inside of me, I kind of felt bad that we did such a thing and we involved girls. To me, it's like a man don't do that. So I was never mad at her for doing what she did, especially when I heard that she was just not trying to lose her kid. So when I came out, I was like, she had to do what she had to do with her kid, and she's a girl. Like, what do you expect? It wasn't a dude. And I ended up bumping into her one time in the store. It was when COVID happened that we had to buy a whole bunch of like water and stuff, and I'm trying to do something with my car. My car wasn't working. I got all this water, and she was one of the things there, and she came over and she's like, "Temp, that's not how you do it," and she ended up like helping me. And that's when I realized it was her, and I just said thank you and walked away. I wouldn't hang out with her or talk to her, but I forgive her. I forgive her for what she did.
I know this was a really difficult time for you because nobody likes to disappoint their mom, right? And you said before that your mom told you if you go to prison, she won't visit you. So you're in prison, and what was it like for you in the beginning, and how did you end up using your time eventually?
It was, man, it was, it's crazy because when I first went in there, it felt cool at a moment because I walk in, everybody, oh, Temp is here, Temp is here. I was the correctional officers were treating me like a king. Everybody knew who I was. So I walk in and put it to this way: while my trial was before I was waiting for the sentence that I was locked up there, they they had me in the intake. So in the intake, there's no TVs, there's none of that. They're waiting for the sentencing. So the first day I walk in there, the correctional officer grabs me up and he's like, "Oh, come with me." So he's like, brings me down a hallway. He's like, "Walk down the hallway and take a right." And I'm thinking I'm getting beat up. I'm like, damn, this dude's like, I hear stories like this. Like, there's gonna be dudes waiting for me on the other side to beat me up. Like, well, what the heck did I do? And so when I turned the corner, it was another CO that happens to be best friends with my brother-in-law. So I'm like relief. I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, I thought I was gonna get beat up, but he knew I was there, and the lieutenant let him give me a TV. I was the only person in there with a TV, so I'm in there watching like the NBA like games and Dateline and all this stuff, waiting for my sentence. So in the beginning, it felt cool. Everybody's showing me love. You know what I'm saying? But the experience, it changed the day I got sentenced. I made a promise to God. I said, God, if you don't give me a lot of time, if I don't get a lot of time today, Like I promise you, the first thing I'll do when I go to the next building, to do my time, like I'm gonna search for you. I'm gonna read your Bible and stuff like that. And that same day when I got transferred, they were giving Bible studies downstairs. And from day one, I started going to the Bible studies. And then it's crazy, bro, because you see my life now, and you see how much I know about the Bible and the life that I live. But the people who discipled me and taught me everything I know were three prisoners that were in there. Like these dudes were there. One of them was there for murder. He was about to walk out. There was an alcoholic that kept violating his parole because he was always drunk. And then the other guy, he was like a drug dealer from he did something in Colombia and got locked up, and then he violated and came in. But these dudes, they knew who I was, and they knew the promise I made to God, and they knew of God. Like they had their paths with God. They knew the word. So, bro, these guys were like, Temp, at 8 o'clock every night, we're gonna have Bible study. We're gonna disciple you. We're gonna show you everything about God. And every day, bro, for the whole time I was there, these dudes would disciple me. And like it was because of them, and you will think about it in a world where a lot of Christians are so judgmental, right? They're quick to throw people away because they're sinners, and they like these dudes were the sinners of sinners. Like they were at the top, but they were the ones, they were my pastors. They were the ones that, without a church, they were the ones that were telling me everything about God. So if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here either, man.
Well, it's I think that sometimes religion gets misconstrued because it's like when you look at the story of Jesus, right? Like who was he with though? Like, he was with the sinners, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I think that sometimes people use religion to cast stones against people, but like the Bible really teaches you like no sin is greater than another, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
nobody is without sin. So it's interesting when you start to talk about some of those like church dynamics of like how like the gossip or like people criticize other people and stuff, but we're all here, you know what I'm saying, and then
Yeah.
no one is without fault or anything. But I think that also when you receive the word from somebody that is like more of your temperament, some of the things that you've been through and seen, you kind of
Yeah.
receive it better. You know what I'm
Yeah. Yo,
saying?
you could relate to them. And, they're, when you know the Bible in the real way, where understand that about Jesus, then these prisoners, they were able to look at me like he was like, "You're here for what? For armed robbery? So you're a thief, right?" That's what they told me. Yo, you're a thief. You know who Jesus went to heaven the day that he got crucified? Who went to heaven with him? The only person that he took that day with him was a thief, the thief in the cross. You know what I'm saying? So they will use that stuff to make it relatable to me and to impact my life. So I took that, it's different. A lot of people grow up in the church, so they grow up thinking that they're just good, everybody else is bad. I had it the other way around. I knew I was a mess, and I needed
Right.
grace. I needed love. Love was what led me to Jesus. It wasn't, me figuring out that there's bad people and good people, because Jesus himself said, why you calling me good? The only good one is my father. My father in heaven is the only. So I learned that from being in prison, man. That we all sinners, and every sin is the same. You know what I'm saying? And the gospel, what the gospel does is offer an opportunity for you to be in front of the judge and being able to let Jesus take take your punishment.
Right.
That's it. That's it. That's the gospel.
I've interviewed a lot of people that have been in prison and they've made a drastic change during their incarceration. But I always say, in a place where you had no freedom physically, you found freedom in your mind.
You felt,
You know what
yeah.
I
If you
mean?
found if you found freedom in there, you felt more free in there than you did out here. Because out here, put it to this way, even dudes that didn't have religion, there was dudes that were coming in that were homeless, that were drug addicts, that would come to prison and tell me straight up, like, I'd rather be here. This is freedom for me. Because out there, my life is being destroyed. Crazy. Crazy.
You know, in life, we are constantly going through things and worrying about this and that. And a lot of times we aren't able to really sit with ourselves, right? And look at ourselves and deal with our traumas. I feel like, especially if you live like in a busy city and everything, like in prison, it makes you slow down. It forces you to really look at things in a certain perspective, right? You know what I mean? Like to like calm yourself almost. Um, did you have to deal like how did you deal with that?
I I think one of the main things that stick out on my on my time there was the fact that you live in this life out there where you kind of control every step you take. Like everything you do is because you want to do it. You know, you're in prison, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, another man's telling you you got to wake up, you got to go brush your teeth. He's telling you when to go to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Searching you and stuff like that, right? Like,
yeah. So it's like you're in there. It doesn't matter how tough you are. At the end of the day, you're in this system where it's like discipline. Discipline all day, every day. You could think you're the man, you could talk all you want, you could fight in prison, you could whatever, but at the end of the day, somebody else is telling you what to do. Another man is telling another man what to do. So it didn't matter if you were the toughest dude. There's this dude that probably never fought in his life, but when he comes in that through those doors, he's telling you what to do. Because if you don't do it, then you're gonna go to the hole and nobody's gonna see you for 60 days. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things that stuck out being in there. But for me, to be honest with you, because I was in search of God, and I wanted to change my life. Like I knew I messed up, like what you said with my mother. The fact my mother, you know, uh, kept that word and didn't go see me, it helped me because she told me, you don't belong there. My son don't belong. I'm not going to see my son there. You don't belong there. So things like that help me understand, like, hey, like I'm here. And if I'm going to change out there, I better start now. And that's what I did. And a lot of the guys, it's funny because a lot of people laughed at me in there. People that knew me in the streets, they thought it was a joke that I was following God. But it was the dudes that were there for murder that had the most respect for me. And they would like tell everybody else, like, yo, like, shut up. Like, he's doing what we all should have done. You know what I'm saying? And they be the ones telling me, like, yo, I'm proud of you. You know? So it's crazy how life works when you kind of notice those things about other people.
Yeah, the hardest dudes are telling you that you're doing the right thing, right? Basically.
The
Yeah.
hardest dudes are proud that you're doing the right thing, but it's because they lived it. They know they just threw their life away for a decision that they probably regret because, there was dudes in there that shot a dude because his wife was, or his girlfriend was cheating at him with that dude. But now he's in prison and that girl's with another guy and another guy. And then so it's like, it wasn't worth it to them. So, these other dudes that are sitting with me in there and are telling me like, you know, when you get out of here, don't look back. And then the ones that had the big mouth and they thought they were tough and they wanted to go back into the streets, those were the ones telling me like, as soon as you walk out of here, you're gonna forget about God. It happens to everybody. So there was like two sides. The realest people were giving me good advice. The people that was still trying to impress people in the streets were giving me terrible advice.
And your son was what, 3 months old when you went in, or when you started dealing with the case, right?
Yeah, when I started dealing with the case. So imagine the first time he ever came to visit me. He may be like 6 months, and he tells me, oh, maybe he came before that, but it was the first time that he spoke to me, and all he said, "Where you going?" That's all he said, and that was the first words that I heard him say.
At how old?
He was like 6, 7 months. Where you going? Like he literally told me, "Where you going?"
At 6 or 7 months old?
6, 7 months. He's like, "Where you going?" Like I don't know if he said, "Where you going?" but that's like he's telling me, like, "Where you going?" Because he's like, you could see it in him. He said it. He said something, but he's like trying to grab me and I was like, damn, my son knows that he's coming out of this place and I'm not gonna walk out with him. And I remember that night, bro. I went up there and I just started crying. So I'm like, man, I failed, man. Like I failed my son. You know what I'm saying? I failed my son. So, it was things like that that just changed me, man. It changed me because I just knew like this is not the right life to live. I can't be that. This has to change. You know what I'm saying? And I can't be a victim no more. I have to, I'm a father now. I have to take on responsibility.
Right. It's almost like that moment kind of seems like a divine intervention kind of moment, bro. Like, you know what I mean? It's almost like
Bro,
through your son, like, for people that heavily believe in God, like that God was speaking through your son to you. You know what I'm saying?
put it to you this way, bro. Put it to you this way. When I was doing the music, I never drove a car. I had a fear of driving. I had a fear of driving, bro. I always thought I was gonna die in a car crash. I always did. So I didn't drive. I would buy a whip, right? I would buy my Cadillacs, whatever, and I would have my boys drive me around anywhere I needed to go, right? Or my girl. And
Maybe it was your mom driving away that one time. Remember
that
trying to
one
escape?
time, yo,
That scared you,
facts, bro. This is real. That's real, bro. Definitely. But bro, I remember my son was like 3 years old, like, and I'm going to church at this time, and out of nowhere he goes, "Daddy, you got to get your license." He called it a license, right? And he's in my wife is driving, and he's in the back seat, bro, and he's like, "Dad, you got to get your license." And it was like that was one of those moments where I was like, "Man, God, are you talking through him? Like you're telling me to be a man?" Bro, and that same day I called one of my boys from church, right? And I was like, "Yo, bro, teach me how to drive. My son just put me in blast, man. Like he just put me in my place." And I learned, hey, check this out. I learned how to drive in the parking lot of the church, bro. That's what I learned how to drive.
wow. That's funny, man. So after your release, you make a transition to becoming a Christian rap artist, right? What was that transition like, and how do you feel the fans have responded to you making that move?
So yeah, so the crazy thing, I come out, and for 12 years, for 10 years, I'm only releasing like one song or two songs, a year. Like I'm not pursuing, I'm not doing music constantly, none of that. Just whenever I felt like, oh, let me just go do something for people can listen to it. I was doing that for 10 years, bro. I put my music to the side for 10 years because I wanted to be in the church, and I needed to learn how to be a man first, how to be a good husband, how to be a good member of the community. So I had, my wife was one that used to tell me, like, Christian, like, focus on us first before you go out and do that, because you know where that led you to. So she understood that there had to be some changes in me first. And, she didn't want me rapping about Jesus and then I'm still struggling, because she's my girl. She knows what happens, what the public doesn't see, she's dealing with. So she's
Right.
telling me, no, like, you need to be a changed man. Like, I need to know that you're real with your faith before you can go and tell people that you're a real Christian. So I took that on. And the only reason why I listened to her advice was because she was the one that was going to the prison to visit me. She got 3 jobs, and like she based her schedule around my visits. Like she would not miss a visit. So I said, you know what? She that's my real, ride or die right there. Like when I come out, it can't be my boys no more. You know what I'm saying? It has to be her because she's the one that was there when I needed people the most. So I listened to her advice and I took it, and I just grew. I grew. I took bumps in the road. I fell. I messed up. I sinned. But throughout that journey, I was around people that understood my past and understood that a lot of the things that I was doing was because of things that were still in me when I was young and through my father and things like that. So I had a good group, a community through my church and leaders and stuff like that. So I learned first how to be a Christian. And then when COVID happened, that's when I said, the whole world's on pause. The whole world is like, which is funny because I tell people this. You remember when Kobe died, the day Kobe died, how it felt?
Yep.
It felt like the world paused. That was like 2 months before Kobe, the lockdowns. And when Kobe died, I felt like God was trying to say something. I said, man, what's going on? It feels weird. How come it just feels like the world stopped just because this guy died? And literally, the lockdowns happened right after that, and it was like God was preparing us for something. He kind of showed us a little bit of the feeling of how it was gonna feel. So when COVID happened, I said, "Man, nobody can leave their house." A lot of rappers, knowing people, knowing how the mind is, a lot of people are just gonna give up and not do nothing and panic and stuff like that. And I said, this is my opportunity. If I'm gonna do music again, this is where I do it now. And I went and I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it, go full force. And in 2020, I came back, bro. I started going so hard that within a year, I was already like coming out in, Redimido's album, who's the #1 Christian artist in the world. There's nobody bigger than Redimido. And I came out with his album. And doors started opening from there, from 2020 up.
How do you think the fans have responded to you doing that change?
So a lot of my fans neglected me. They didn't like, put it to this way, friends that I was like this with when I came out, who were rappers, stopped talking to me, because to them, I was supposed to come out. A rapper goes to prison and comes out to be more famous. Like, that's the opportunity. Like, people are waiting to present you with deals and stuff like that, because you're the guy that just went to prison and coming out, and now you're gonna go and diss everybody. So a lot of people were disappointed with the fact that I didn't come out the same way I came in, and they didn't want to listen to me. They didn't want to know nothing about me. So a lot of my fans, bro, I used to get so much, like, you hear about hate mail and tweets and stuff like that, bro. I was getting that since the day I came out of prison. On MySpace, I was getting hate mail. Like, people were literally like telling me, like, you ruined my life. Like, fans, bro, like fans, because if anybody knew my music, there's a difference between you just being a rapper or being famous. There's certain people that have loyal fan base where people like breathe. They wake up and like
cult following.
They eat your music daily. Yeah, cult following, bro. Like, everything. So I was that person. So to a lot of people, I turned my back on them. So they didn't want to hear me. They didn't care if I was rapping about Jesus. They didn't care if it was whatever. So fast forward to now, all this time, I didn't drop a Christian album till March. So recently,
right,
my first Christian album. And I think I'm grateful that I did, because it took me that long to say, if I do Christian music, how am I going to do music that they are going to hear? The fans that used to listen to me. Like, I got to get them back, So I did this album called Leyendas, and I did it with the mindset of, I wanted it to be a Christian rap song for the streets. You know what I'm saying?
That's definitely the vibe of the album, though.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like really like preachy or anything, or like, you know what I mean? Like, the sound of it, you still got the gritty sound. The production is just ridiculous, bro. Like, it's
the wordplay. I'm saying some crazy stuff on the song sometimes, but I'm using my gift so that if I say a certain thing that sounds negative, I'm tying it to something that's godly. You just have to, again, you have to be a student of hip hop to understand the language. So in reading the Bible, I understood that Jesus himself will speak in parables, and he would tell his disciples sometimes, like, I'm only saying this way so you can understand me. I don't want the crowd to understand me. So he spoke in a way that only certain people will understand exactly what he was saying. So I told myself I have to be that way in hip hop. I'm going to get a lot of people that are going to criticize me for it, a lot of church people. But at the end of the day, this is what Jesus used to do too. That's why he said with the sinners, that's how he communicated the way he communicated.
I think that people don't understand that if your intention is to help lead people out of like a certain lifestyle or their world, you have to be able to enter into their world in order to do it. Right.
Yeah.
And they're not going to respect if you just came there with like butterflies and like you know what I mean? Like that kind of like style and stuff like that.
Just with the suit and tie.
Right, exactly. You know, like so you have to be able to be somebody that they resonate with, just like the same way the people that discipled you, right? You were able to resonate with where they came from, and they were able to reach you with their word. You respected their word even more because you knew where they came from.
Yeah, and they're not putting on a costume. Like just
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? Like if I show up to the hood in a tie and a suit, which I don't, whoever does it, okay for them. God calls people to do certain things, but me, it's like I'm just putting on a costume. Like this is still me. It's the inside that changed. It's not the outside. You know what I'm saying? Because if I when I was putting on the suit in the beginning, I was messing up, and then looking in the mirror, like, man, I got this Halloween costume on, but I'm still messing up. You know what I'm saying? And that's why even with religious things, out of topic, Halloween, for example, a lot of Christians they don't like it. They talk so bad about it, but it's like how many costumes do Christians put on every day? Because every day we're doing something. Every day we're lying about something. Every day we're putting on a mask. What is it? You know what I'm saying? You choose. So that's what I always tell people. And again, I credit it to those prisoners because they show me that when Jesus called the Apostle Paul to be the one that wrote a third of the New Testament, that was the guy that was killing the Christians before that. He was the one persecuting them, right? So I look at my life and I say, man, I used to diss all the rappers. I'm the one that used to kill them in the tracks, right? But I'm exactly who God wants to go back and speak to them about him, and I don't have to be fake. I don't have to put on a costume for that. I just speak of what he did for me and how my life changed.
I think that that's great that what you said too, that you keep it real about the fact is that a lot of times we do lie to ourselves, right? Just because we're a part of something like religion or something, people automatically assume, oh, that makes me a good person. But that's not the truth though, because there's a lot of ways that people, I mean, we see with social media these days, you see videos of people going off on people all the time, and you know what I mean? Like that could be someone that is from the church or something, right? That
Yeah.
lives a holy life or something,
Yeah.
But it's like it's really you should judge it by how are you really being in your actual life on an everyday basis? Are you treating people with kindness? Are you really living what is being preached to you, or you know what I mean? Or are you just
Yeah.
trying to justify things? So I commend you for keeping it real and saying that, because I think a lot of times people won't be honest about that.
Yeah, and it's really hard because one of the things that has allowed me to change is accountability, and that's a thing. A lot of Christians become Christians and so radical they don't want to be a part of a church, and it's understandable because you go to the church and you find out quick that nobody's perfect. Like there's a lot of people are a mess in there, and some people are putting on a mask. They're smiling one day, but a dude smiling in your face, but he's beating up his wife at home. So I learned that accountability is needed for anybody to change. And for me, and put the Christianity aside. You know, having guys around you like me, like when I go to, let's say I'm in Rhode Island, if I go to New York to do a video shoot, right? I know myself. I know my old me, right? I know myself. I know that when I'm away from my wife, if I go to another state and I meet a girl, most likely the flesh that's in here, somehow our door's gonna open, and there's a chance that I'm gonna end up messing up because I know me. I know who I used to be. I know where my thoughts go. Even as a Christian, I have thoughts. So I find myself when I travel, when I go to these places, I'll bring my brother-in-law, I'll bring guys from the church. I'm like, guys, I got a music video in New York for a day. You guys need to go with me. While you're with me, I don't care if I tell you, hey, I'll be back. I got to go see somebody else here, whatever. Don't let me. Don't let me. Because as soon as I tell you that, I might be in trouble. I might be doing something I'm not supposed to. So make sure you guys hold me accountable. And I say that to say that there was people in the industry that weren't Christians that were doing that back then. Because I used to listen to stories of Daddy Yankee doing stuff like that. Like he wouldn't take girls back to the hotel room because he knew that it took one girl to go to court, to go to the police and say he raped me or one of his boys did this to me. So he even knew that hanging out with the wrong guys was bad, and letting people come into his space or into his private life was a bad idea for his marriage. You know what I'm saying? So there was people that were doing that even in the world. You know what I'm saying? So accountability is a huge part. Whether you want to change your life, without Christianity or you're in Christianity, accountability is something that you need everywhere. I think for any company to be successful or any place to be successful, you need accountability. You need people that are there that are going to hold you accountable. So that when they see you kind of like moving to the left too much, they're telling you, hey, you're getting out of line. You need to come back this way. We need to refocus. We need to change this. You can't be alone in a room with this girl having a conversation, even if you've known her for 15 years. Like, protect your marriage. So that's the kind of things that I've learned that have helped me a lot.
Right. I forgot to ask you earlier. Did you ever have any interactions with Fat Joe, or like were you able to like work with him or anything like that at any time?
I had one. I had one. And again, I don't get in between the problem with him and Cuban because I know that's really personal. But according to people, he's a great guy, whatever. All I remember from him was, it's really different from Cuban. Cuban like embraced me. He knew who I was and like took me into to the family. I saw Fat Joe in Calle Ocho in Miami one time, and we were all in the back waiting to perform. And this guy walked in with like 20 dudes. He had a big entourage. Come to find out was because he was scared of people that were threatening him, and I knew he had the beef with Cuban. I think at that time it was like elevated, like they were really like really after each other.
What year was this?
I don't remember. I know it was Calle Ocho in the early 2000s. It had to be early 2000s.
So this was prior to you meeting Cuban, though.
Prior, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It was prior, and but I remember he just walked by me. He didn't say hi to me, nothing. And at the time, I used to think like, is it because he knows that the reggaeton dudes don't mess with me, or does he have something against Don Dinero? I didn't know, but he didn't show me. Every artist there. There was even English rappers there, like Flow Rider and stuff like that. Everybody showed me love because everybody knew who I was. But Fat Joe was the only rapper that didn't show me love, man. I don't know why.
Wow, so because that was going to be my next question, because in the comments they're going to go crazy like, oh well, what if he didn't know who you were, blah blah, blah, right? So at that time, obviously your name was big enough that people knew you.
He knew who I was. He knew who I was because everybody there at the time when I was doing my thing, bro, just put it to you this way. I was going after so many rappers that everybody knew. This track and dudes going at everybody, they're all gonna find out. People gonna talk about it. I used to meet famous rappers and they'd be like, yo, I'm listening to your diss tracks here. And like they would tell me like, yo, don't tell nobody, right? But everybody knew who I was, man. I was like the on-site hype of the moment. Like right. Everybody was like, Temperamento is the next one coming. You know what I'm talking? Nori, I know he was close to Nori, and Nori like literally brought me up to like Russell Simmons and like, I in the Hood Lab, I'm in the studio with him and he brings me downstairs specifically like telling Russell Simmons, he was drunk, but he's like, this is the next one and this is the one you gotta listen to and forget these guys. This is the one, so everybody, they all knew who I was. But again, I don't know if he did it because he didn't, again, he had maybe beef and he was trying to watch his back because he was with 20 dudes. So I'm guessing he probably just wanted to go perform and leave and have no interactions. But he was like with 20 dudes. Nobody was going to do nothing to him.
Right.
I feel like he should have shown me love, a little bit of love.
Well, like he's been like kind of like said to like not have wanted to other Latino artists to really come up because he wanted to be that one after Pun had passed. Like he wanted to like be like the only one almost. Like other people have said things like that before, But I think that it's kind of sad because like I felt like Terror Squad, not only as a group but as a record label, had he shown they put out successful projects like more consistently. Think about how many Latino artists would have went and signed to Terror Squad. They would have been the Rockefeller for Latino artists. You know what I mean? Like the Rock Nation for them. Like it would have been on such a bigger level.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't try to get too much into that part of it, because I'll be honest with you, and I'm not gonna say a name, but there was an artist that was close to him that I did meet one time, and we're hanging out, and he told me straight up. He said that Joe got him 4 record deals, 4, and he specifically told me. He said, "Bro, it's impossible for a person to get more than 1 record deal in their lifetime." He got me 4 deals, and he said every single deal I screwed up.
Wow. Okay.
So he said every single deal I screwed it up. So again, I think there's 2 sides of Fat Joe. Is that personal side and then the business side. I don't understand the business, but I do know that back in those days, if you were him, a lot of those guys they were robbing a lot of artists and doing a lot of stuff that was messed up. I think that was normal back then. And then, but for the personal life, I don't really know him personally, so I can't talk about that. But when the business side, I think that it was normal for a guy like him to feel the way that you said he felt. Look at Diddy. He wanted to be the superstar when he wasn't. And I think with Pun, it had to be the same thing, because Pun was the man. Like, he was the one. You're talking about, you have a career, and then the dude that you introduce becomes bigger than you. I think there's something that's going to mess with your ego there. You know what I'm saying? And then you have, the little guys, right? Like Cuban and them around you that are nicer than you too. You know what I'm saying? And all respect to all of them, to Joe and stuff. But to me, Cuban was a perfect example. He was better. He was better than Joe too. It's like everybody he had wish at the end of the day he should have been proud of, because it's like, if you look at it like, I'm the reason they're heard and they're all better than me, then that makes me look good. Let me show them this type of love. You know what I'm saying? His legacy would have been better if none of that stuff would have happened and they would have kept being together,
I agree. I completely agree. And I think that the fans lost out on a lot, because
oh man,
yeah.
it hurts me to this day, man, that their Terror Squad's not around. And it hurts me more that Pun's not around, because
Right.
it would have been, the things that Reggaeton did, like, they would have gotten there quicker if Pun was still alive, because he would have opened a lot of doors for people, and Cuban would have been right next to him, and Cuban would have opened a lot of doors for people, because knowing Cuban, personally, I know that he's that type of dude, and I also know, not to defend him or take sides, but I do know that if he had something against you, it was because something happened, like it was real. Because I know that the people that showed him love, he was the best, man. He would treat people like kings.
Can I just guess the artist that you're talking about? Is it Tony
No.
Sunshine? No, no. No, it's not. No.
You could take all the guesses you want, but
But you said it's not Tony Sunshine?
I can't tell you, man.
Oh, it is.
I can't tell you. I didn't tell you.
No. Okay, all right.
People, you're hearing it from him. I'm not saying nothing. I'm not saying that.
Okay, all right. So you're a father today, right? When you look at the relationship that you had with your father, how does that affect the type of father you are to your own children?
Yeah, man, that's hard to even speak about, because I have kids with other women too. I have a lot of kids. I have 8 in total. I don't have that much of a good relationship with baby moms. My other kids are older now, so now we're tight, But I didn't know how to be a father, bro. I just learned, a few years ago in the church. Like, I learned how to be a dad. You know what I'm saying? Even to the point where, for me to look at my kids and see them for who they are as my children, that took me a long time. I was so hurt from life that even just looking at people for who they were was difficult for me. I don't know why. So for me to even love a child as my own was difficult for me because of what happened in my past. So, now it's different, man. Now I'm living the type of life where every minute counts, every moment. You know what I'm saying? I'm to the point where in the music, if you're listening to me in the music now, you would think I'm traveling and doing shows because I'm doing songs with all the greats in the Christian music world. But I'm not touring. I'm not doing concerts. I'm not doing none of that. You know what I'm saying? I hardly do interviews, right? So it's because I know the treasures that I truly have in life are not those things. They're right here. I wake up in the morning and see a queen. I see royalty. I see my kids, and I know that life, like the Bible says, is like vapor. It's like this. So, I think that helps me be a better father than he was. You know what I'm saying? And I only say better because the decision that he made at the end of his life wasn't the right one. You know, I still believe that he could have gotten for my sister could have forgave him, and I could have forgave him, and my mother could have forgave him if he just did the right thing and he didn't go that route. So I only say that to that part because I'm sure he did a lot of good things that I didn't know about that were better than things I did. You know, he didn't walk away from his kids for all those years. I did. I was walking away from baby mom. So it helps me a lot, man. It helps me a lot. I know that I'm not supposed to live his life. I got to live my own.
I can look at you talking about this and I could tell that it hurts you for the mistakes that you made as a father and the times that you weren't there when now the man that you are today, you know that you should have been there and responsible for them. Is that accurate?
A little accurate because I'm still struggling with some of them and some relationships. There's one in specific where there's no communication. Because of things that were happening and people threatening me, and at the end of the day, it's my fault. You know what I'm saying? It's my fault. Like I'm the one that was supposed to be with their mothers and not walk away and be the dad. But again, I didn't know better. So I think that's the one weakness you're always finding me. I'm never gonna be the perfect dad, but I'm working towards it. I'm hoping that the life that I live can be a good example, and that somehow bridges, doors can be open, and those burned bridges can come back, and things can get done the right way. Because another thing is, you think you're a Christian, and because you're a Christian, you think you're gonna have better relationships with your baby moms, and everything's gonna be great, but and this is not throwing shade on them. Never. I have total respect for every single one of them. But, sometimes you realize that some people loved you more when you were in the world and you were lost and you were, when you were doing the illegal stuff and bringing all the money in. Some people love you more and some people don't accept you as the person that seems like they changed because they're still hurt because how you hurt them. They don't want to accept that you're changed. They don't want to believe it. But I'm hoping that time works in my favor, that I'm able to heal and they could heal and we could do things so I could be more involved in some of the life of my kids.
Well, Temperamento, I just want to thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate you. I loved the conversation that we had because it was very positive. There was a lot of gems in there, and there was a little bit of some of the funny stuff, and some of the the more street stuff that was great too. I know the audience will enjoy that. Is there anything else you want to say to the fans before we go ahead and wrap it up?
Yeah, go and listen to the new album. It's called Leyendas. It's Temperamento en Wolandia. Wolandia is a rapper producer from Chile. I decided to do, that's another thing. I wanted my album to be in collaboration to kind of represent what I was telling you, the whole community accountability thing. Because I've never been somebody that wants to be at the top or wants to be looked at as the best. It's all me. I've always been about my guys. Like I always want to bring people with me. I always been that. I've been about groups and stuff like that. So listen to this album. I hope you like it. Like we said earlier, this is a hip hop album. This is a street album. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't swear. We don't swear in it. But I'm telling you, the language that I'm speaking in it, you're gonna be like, yeah, like this is like the '90s hip hop. Like it's dope.
It's definitely dope. It has like an underground vibe to it, and
Oh yeah.
man, definitely, yeah. You guys should definitely check it out,
And it's
man.
Spanglish too. Spanglish. You don't really listen to a lot of Spanish artists going Spanglish hard. So, just go out there and listen to it. Follow me on Instagram, Temperamento Oficial, or just type Temperamento. You'll see me on there with a profile picture with the crown right here with the hat. So follow me on social media, and all I can say is um, if you get to like my music, just follow me on social media and get to know a little bit more about my personal life, like you're gonna do in this interview, because that's the person that I'm really trying to introduce to everybody. Is the imperfect sinner that had a chance to meet a God that changed everything for me. So just follow me as I follow him.
Temperamento salute, man.
Salute, my brother. Respect to you, man. You're awesome, man. This is good. But the best interview I've ever had, bro.
Thank you, man. It's an honor.
Sometimes I do interviews and I'm asking questions because it's so boring and they're not really asking like good things. So, wow, man. Like, thank God for you because you really got.
I promised you. Do you remember when I reached out to you? I said this is going to be the best interview you've ever had because I know.
Say that.
I know the type of time that you're on, right? And I knew I was the right person to be able to have that kind of conversation with you, because that's the thing that with me, the interviewer's job is to elevate whatever energy you bring in. So if you're going to bring negative energy, then I have to try to ask you about it, or you're going to bring positive energy. My goal is always to be able to conversate with anybody in the room, whatever you could talk about. I could talk about it with you. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I appreciate what you brought.
And you do such a good job, man. You got to start doing one-on-one interviews, man. You have to. I'll definitely subscribe, bro. Truly respect what you're doing and how you did this, because not everybody has that gift to be able to let somebody like me speak, not just as an artist, but as a human being. Because you really did, like you got into my mind and into my heart, and you saw certain things, and you got things out of me that I would have never told anybody. So a lot of this interview is big because a lot of my fans are gonna hear stuff for the first time.